Hello, hello. What's up? How's everyone doing? Hey Connor, how you doing? What's up Maz, Kalisa, Maggie, Ballerine to Ballerine. What's so funny? Oh my god. Newberry. Hey Chelsea, Bristol Man. Alrighty guys, I'll give a quick introduction of why I'm going live today if you didn't already know. I am doing a live stream with a bunch of really awesome industry experts, and we're going to discuss the current situations, trials and tribulations, suggestions. Feel free to just chuck in a line whenever you want, just write in. I'll try my best to keep up with all the questions. Our first guest is Paul from 7 Miles. I'm going to invite him in right now. If you have any questions, just rip them off as soon as you, while you're going. And Paul should be. Hey Michael, how you doing? Hey Yanina, hey Jim. Thanks Lily. Like my shirt. Thanks guys. Thanks for the hair compliment. I did see that. Paul.
Okay, mate. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you? What are you doing? You on the veranda?
Yeah, mate. Let me show you my outlook. It's not all that bad. Self-isolation is.
Yeah, damn. That looks really rough,
man. Yeah.
Hey, man.
It's not too bad. How are you?
How about we start off with an introduction? You can tell everyone who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there. I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, cool, man. So I'm Paul. I'm currently the national trainer and brand ambassador for 7 Miles Coffee Roasters. I'm also a founding director for a company called Slow Brew, which is a cold brew company where we're currently canning nitro coffee and black coffee in cans at the moment, and that's a very new business. I've been in coffee for 19 years, so just a little bit. I think I've worked at all different levels. I started with franchise. I moved into a very large company, then into, at the time, a small company. You may have heard of it. It's called Honor Coffee. And then I moved into 7 Miles Coffee Roasters. And I've been there for about 5 years. Yes, in my time, I've competed a lot. Won the Danes Australasian Grand Barista Championship back when it was a thing. Placed a few times in New South Wales and made it to the semi-finals once in the Australian Barista Championship, and also judged a lot as well. So, and in my time, I've been a trainer, salesperson, green bean buyer, green bean seller, QA, roaster, and I guess a consultant as well to cafes. So, had a few things on.
Hell yeah. So I'm just going to try to get my... All good? All right. Man,
cool.
Tell me, how's the last week been for you and 7 Miles? Or, any coffee company or your cafes that you guys are linked up with? Just give us kind of like a quick scope of what's that been like, and how have you guys been dealing with it so far?
Yeah. So firstly, I'm on leave, so I had to take one of the cuts. So 7 Miles itself has definitely experienced a bit of a downturn in trade, and it's, I guess, for a lot of people it's pretty grim out there. I have spoken to some people that are certainly having the experience of the community getting behind them, and their business is actually picking up because of this. But it's certainly not the norm. Obviously, a lot of people, their volumes have gone downhill. What they can sell has gone downhill, and it's becoming progressively harder and harder, I suppose, as more and more people are also self-isolating. It's stopping people from even getting out and supporting their local cafe, stopping people even walking down the street just to get a cup. But I've definitely found that, I guess, the local heroes, the cafes that are in suburbs and away from the cities, they're the ones that are probably thriving a little bit more. The ones in the city have taken real hits. A lot have closed down, and even last week I know we were getting notification after notification of cafes just deciding to close their doors. So, yeah, it's a pretty scary time in the industry, that's for sure.
I can definitely agree with you, man. I think that is a pretty big trend with the city cafes really feeling the heat, and kind of the suburbs kind of really having the communities rally together. Seems to be I've seen so far as well. What do you think the impact this kind of virus is going to have, not only on just the hospitality industry, but also like specialty coffee and what we are and what we love? What do you see? First of all, how long do you see this going for, and also what are the impacts that you can see happening post this as well?
Yeah, I think the impacts are obviously going to be business closures, and then there's no two ways about that. There are people that are going to survive, and there are people that are not going to be able to hang on for that time. I think you're going to see, I guess, the cream rise, and I call it a little bit negative, but I do see this as an opportunity for the industry to maybe rationalise a little bit, get rid of a little bit of the crap out there, and that's cafes, that's roasters included. I think there's a lot of bottom feeders that have been pushing the value of coffee down a lot in the recent time, and making it a very competitive industry, and putting financial pressures, even before something huge like this, putting financial pressures on cafes all over. I speak to Sydney in that it's a dog-eat-dog world when you're selling coffee out there, and if you're trying to sell a higher value product, then you're going to come up against a lot of competition, because there are people out there willing to drop the value of a bag of coffee right down to low 20s, and even under that, and that makes it very hard, I guess, to buy good quality coffee. But it also, I guess, instills a mindset in people that coffee is cheap, and that it should be cheap, and that we should continue to keep it cheap. And I think this has now sort of put a pressure on cafes to the point where I think we will see the crisis close a lot of people down. It could last, who knows, it could last 3 or 4 months before we start really getting back into our real jobs. And so the people that are going to hang on are hopefully those people that want to do some positive stuff in coffee. As the people that are listening, and the economy of the cafe is pretty tough, and I think now could be a time for us to really make some positive steps in the value of coffee, and to tell the story of the value of coffee to people and change the perceived value of that in people's minds.
I've got a question here from Jan. I can't see the whole question, unfortunately. Can you see
I've got it. Yeah, so the question's, in your opinion, would this be a step backwards for specialty? Are we at a risk of going back to dark roast, low-quality green beans due to economic effects? I think it's potentially going to be the opposite, I think. And you might know, Yanina, what the problem is. I look forward to listening to you a little bit later, what the effect out there of the coronavirus on producing countries, because I haven't been able to see a lot of news for those people. And so I know that they're probably feeling the pinch of values all over the world dropping and markets dropping, and they're going to start feeling it. But I think that is also going to get to a point where that drives the value up, and we get to, hopefully an area where we are out there buying more expensive green coffee. And those higher value farms are going to be the ones that cling on, just like the higher value cafes are going to be the ones that cling on up. And that's the way I feel. I really hope it does. It turns out a situation like that where we see those better quality places, better quality producers selling better quality coffee, and therefore those people out there buying the better quality are the ones that get to hang on and make some improvements in the industry.
I think that also ties into your first kind of statement, talking about all the cafes closing and the market actually desaturating, and kind of I have this view as well that a lot of the pretenders and a lot of people who maybe just have a lot of money and just think that they can make money from a cafe instead of the people who actually really enjoy what they do, people who lived in cafes, people who breathe cafes and breathe specialty coffee or breathe even normal coffee and breathe good hospitality. I really hope they're the ones that maybe there is going to be some that bite the dust, which is a little bit unfortunate. But along with that, a lot of people who think cafes are really good investments will most likely not be inclined to be opening shops anytime soon. With that in mind, anyone viewing, I think actually it would be a really cool time to open a cafe once this all blows over, because there's going to be so many spots. When there's so much more spots, agree with Jan. When there's so many more places, there's going to be cafes that are fully fitted out. There's going to be a bunch of hospitality workers looking for work, meaning that all the quality hopefully is going to raise, and like just the standard, everything on top of that is actually quite positive. But I really do, my heart really goes out to the people who've put their heart and soul into a cafe right now and are not really thinking too much about holding on for any longer because of general life pressures and financial issues, which is really sad to see. But I'm really excited to see what the future looks like for us. And I really hope people give it a second crack if they have to close their shop now and just reopen again. I'm not really aware of how the financial burdens will affect people, and everyone's super unique and different. But this is more about sharing the ideas and opportunities. So I'm glad that I'm not the only one thinking like this as well, which is really cool. Might go back to one of another questions. Can you read that whole question? Because I can't read it for some reason.
How are you handling the conversations with clients, and what are some of the scenarios you're facing right now? Certainly the climate is a lot of people getting laid off or stood down from work. And, owners, I guess, seeing a point of not being able to employ their usual staff, and come in and out. A lot of people like that are really hurting, and I think the cafes themselves too. I guess some of the conversations I've had with cafes is to go out and start pushing for things like rent relief, start pushing for things that will help keep cash in their bank for now. And obviously we can leave the conversation of the government and that sort of stuff aside, but hopefully there's going to be some relief in the near future for those places. But I think now is the conversation. I mean, personally, I know we've had to ask for rent relief on our warehouse where we're producing cold brew, just because we know that now the money's just going to stop for us. And they're the same conversations I'm having with people out there as well. People are genuinely freaking out as to how they're going to stay in business. But I know there's relief in paying loans. There's relief out there now with tax, and hopefully people can push for some relief with paying rents and stuff like that. And hopefully that will change. That will change the face a little bit, and hopefully allow people to hang on, even if they do have to close the doors. Maybe allow people to just hang on longer. And get to a point where we start seeing people walking the streets again. So I mean,
you did mention over private message. Sorry?
No, you go.
You did mention me over private message. Something about pricing and how the structure is going to be now and maybe after the epidemic's over, or pandemic, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think, now's a really good opportunity because I think people are seeing the value that is placed in the convenience of getting coffee and food just from your local cafe. It's not easy to do now. You got to phone ahead, you got to use an app, you got to walk up to a window, hopefully you can get some takeaway. You can't use your keep cup in a lot of places. People are starting to see, I guess, the hidden values in that. And so now is a really good opportunity for us to change the perceived value of what coffee is worth out there. And, I think there's room for everyone. I mean, love it or hate it, there's room for 7-Eleven. There's room for mum and dad cafes. There's room for specialty cafes, just like in any craft category, beverage, food, whatever. There's room for all different levels of business. And I think now is the time to really start selling the fact that, I use this specialty coffee and it is a high value, and this is the reason it's a high value. And we're going to continue to pay higher prices for that because we want to support that producer who's also going through some tough economic times. And to start having conversations around what it takes to get that cup of coffee to people. I think the industry's needed a price rise in just simply the cup of coffee for a long, long time. It's been stagnant for a very long time. And I think now is the time to change that perceived value. Going, you know what, guys, there's a lot of moving parts just to get you your convenient cup of coffee. So why not, throw an extra $1 or $2 on top of a cup of coffee so that we can, I see it as a safeguard for the industry in the future as well. It's going to allow roasters to pay more for coffee. It's going to allow cafes to pay more for coffee and therefore have a little bit more money in the bank for maybe times like this again. You never know. We might see another virus like this in 10, 20 years' time. And hopefully in that time people are a little bit more prepared for things like this. But I certainly see that now is a good time to change that perceived value of what a cup of coffee is worth to the average person out there.
Mm. Well, I guess there's two ways you can kind of take that point as well. I agree there's a lot of, silver linings in these things, and maybe it is a really good time for everyone as a whole. If you're thinking some sort of cafe, any kind of cafe that's not like 7-Eleven style, to be actually upping their prices to 5, 6, 7. As a whole, I think that's a really positive thing, and I think it's something that obviously is way overdue and should be a normal thing. And I've also been encouraging my clients to up the price and things as well, because the more people do it, the more it's going to become normal. I think lots of people are paying $8, $9 for drinks these days anyway, that maybe have way less time and value and pressure put into the preparation of those things as it does to actually have a coffee like grown, picked, sourced, moved. Like there's so many hands it's got to go through, and there's $3. And maybe is this a time? A really good question is do we actually separate ourselves, specialty cafes to normal cafes, and start to sell the higher price in general? Like I think you have to be open to all options. I think there's some really solid points all around here. And I think if you look in the comments, business operators have the opportunity to rationalise and adjust their business model without a lot of the perceived hurdles of pre-COVID. So I think Connor definitely, I think there's a lot of people in the comments agreeing with that point as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, and you talk about that separation. I think that separation is well overdue. There are a lot of people out there that don't know the difference in the value of a cup of coffee from a specialty place putting maximum effort into a cup, and right through to even the 7-Eleven. Even though it comes out of a machine, people just think coffee's coffee and it should be cheap and it's fuel. People will happily go out and spend $12 on a schooner of craft beer on the weekend, and they'll buy 5, 6, 7 of those, and they won't even scoff at it because it's high value, and they can see that the perceived value in that coffees is different, and they probably buy as many during the week, but for some reason they don't think there's value in that, even though we all know there's more hands to get that coffee. to those people as well.
Mm. Have you seen Dietrich's question?
If we can finally get a price rise, who will benefit, the producer, the cafe owner? I think we need to make sure that everyone is benefiting. So, I mean, the price rise, yes, the cafe sees the initial benefit, but that should allow the cafes then to go out and the roasters in turn go out and charge higher prices. You know, it only takes an extra $1, let's say, in a cup to make an extra $60 to $80 per bag of coffee. And, you know, with that $60 to $80, you can easily be putting $10 more into your staff, your staff's wages, $10 more into your cafe's profit. And then, you know, easily, and we're just talking, you know, an $80 gain from one bag of coffee, easily another $10 into that. And then the roaster in turn can afford to buy more expensive coffee. So, you know, the flow-on effect of just one single dollar is massive. So to change that perceived value and to convince the customer that $1 will touch all of those places and actually make sure it does, I see it. You know, I see it being, I'm not going to say easy, but achievable. It's definitely achievable for us to go out there and drive that price up and make a little bit more money.
Amazing. I really do agree with a lot of things. I agree solely with, I think it's just the perfect time for hopefully these things to actually be put into place. And maybe some cafes can take the lead on this and really just, you know, even given the idea, if anyone here knows anyone, we can push that idea of increasing the price. So all benefits of the chain. And I think obviously the reason is people think $4 is for a coffee, like the cup only costs 10 cents, blah, blah, blah. They do the breakdown they see on Facebook. It's more about educating the general customer on what we can do and what we can afford, and what a producer can afford, and what commodity coffee versus specialty coffee. Like, we need to really put a really hard line down the middle of what those things are. And then, you know, I've always kind of had the thought of like, why doesn't a cafe do both? Like, it's, you know, like, why doesn't someone buy a lower end coffee and really actually kind of share? Like, it's the same deal as the craft beer. Like, there are breweries that have really expensive beer, really low quality beer, and I know a couple of other cafes, I wouldn't say sell low grade coffee, but they sell coffees that are nice classic chocolatey that cater to everyone. Then they have the fruity high end stuff, which, you know, it's a really clear side by side. So it's really cool to see what more than ever people extract. What, €1? How much is €1 in AUD? It'd be
not a lot. Probably about it's probably about 74 Australian dollars now. But I think €1 bought about $1.70, something like that when I last travelled to Europe. What was it?
Yeah, $1.20. So Matt.
Okay, $1.20. I mean, the market's changed a lot, and that's an interesting point in itself. I mean, when I travelled Europe, I wasn't seeing a lot of €1. I was interestingly seeing a lot of €4, $5, and €6 for coffees, and that sort of put it into perspective as well, to know that, you know, if you can convert that to an Australian dollar, and sometimes we were paying in excess of $7 or $8 for a cup of coffee. I'm like, and here we are, you know, some of the cafes around Sydney are still charging $3. And for
coffee as well. Like, definitely when I was there in Europe, I was expecting, you know, I'm paying $11 to $21 for a coffee, and it's almost the same value as what I would get out of a 7-Eleven coffee, which is a bit scary. So obviously everyone gets their tickles in their own way. So
absolutely.
All right. I think Nadi is in. Did you want to finish off with anything else, man? And we'll keep going. We'll keep moving on.
Yeah, cool. I mean, obviously Nadi's going to elaborate a little bit more on the price of a cup as well. and he's got a lot of views on that, so it'll be really good to hear what he has to say. But it's certainly come a time for us to, I guess, click together as a community and start to change the perceived value of coffee, make a little bit more money, and hopefully come out the other end a little bit healthier.
Yeah. Man, I really appreciate your time.
Yep.
I'm so glad to hear all your ideas and people agreeing and enjoying that as well. I guess we'll have to chat soon. But thank you so much for the value. I actually wrote a few notes down, so I'm going to recap everything as well. So
cool.
I guess
Awesome.
catch you around the flip side, hopefully, if we're all still alive in a couple of months. Lol.
Absolutely. And thank you, man. I think it's important for us to have this conversation because, it's really good of you to open it up and to get some communication out there for us to start inspiring the community in such a tough time.
Yeah. If we can just get one person to be inspired, man, I'm going to be stoked. So
yeah,
that's it.
Sweet.
Man. I'll talk soon.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. Alrighty, next up. So we got Nadi, the coffee accountant. Hopefully he's looking into this.
Hey.
Hey, Nadi. How you doing,
mate? How you doing?
Living the dream, mate.
Good, mate. Good. Just... you or me?
Both of us, obviously.
Awesome.
Hey, man. How about we start off with introducing yourself to everyone who's viewing, who you are, what do you do, where have you been, what have you done?
Cool. Nadi Elias. I love to call myself a growth accountant, and I specialize in working with cafe and coffee entrepreneurs. And here's the beautiful one-liner to not only keep their doors open, but to open more doors to opportunities. Author of a book called Count More Beans, focused on the 7 steps to making more profit, having more cash, and maximizing the value of the coffee business. But everything's changed, hasn't it? So it's just been crazy. It's not about growth, it's about survival. So I've got an accounting firm, very modern in shape and form, based out of Melbourne, but we've got clients Australia-wide. Basically work with a bunch of coffee businesses, predominantly cafes, a couple of roasters, and people along that value chain. So what's been going on? Basically just checking in with clients, making sure things are being translated. There's a lot of craziness going on, as everyone knows. There's every hour is different. I mean, I think we're really not fortunate, but I think we had a good opportunity to plan things out over 6 months and a year, and in any business, and all that's been thrown out. Everything's changed. What you planned for now could change. When ScoMo comes out and announces a new round of stimulus, or something else that's going, the next national cabinet, and everything gets thrown up, and it's just amazing. I think the lines have blurred in terms of what I do and when I work, because it's just like sending stuff out. I feel like a news reporter. I feel like, just obviously an advisor, as a confidant, the shoulder to cry on. It's just been a whirlwind over the last week. We've had businesses that we work with stand down employees, close down venues because they're just in spots where there's been mass exodus, be it the CBD of Melbourne or wherever it might be. There's and then there's ones just transforming and doing some amazing stuff, and it's kind of almost business as usual. So really flipping on a takeaway, from point of takeaway. And I think a lot of it just came down to how they ran their business at the start, how lean they were, what their product mix was, and this tribe that they had around them. And I think a lot of it's coming home to roost for these business owners. I mean, I'm seeing some of my clients that are business owners that, I guess, I won't say didn't have to work. They definitely work. But what they did within the business has dramatically changed. So we're seeing a lot of the owners come back on the floor, in the kitchen, doing whatever they can to basically keep things going. And I think it's just all about that little bit extra that can be done to survive, and that's market hard. Really understand what's coming in and out of the business, and I think what's come out of this is a big reality check. And I don't want to say that in a mean way, because unfortunately it's going to be bad for a lot of business out there. But I think positive, or at least eye-opening for a lot of people that never asked any questions of themselves or their businesses because things were good. And no one ever asked questions. People just expect that their accountant just fills in forms, and they just expect that everything just flows nicely. And when you have a massive when someone comes along and rips the rug out from underneath you, you're just standing there on your own, and there's not a lot there. So I think a lot of people have really had a bit of a reality check, and some big changes are going to happen in the industry once we hopefully come out of this, and we will. And it's probably the correction that we needed in the coffee industry in Australia, that was always getting pushed and pushed and pushed back. And I think, sadly, it's that correction that's now coming, and the strong businesses will hang in there. The ones with the deeper pockets, or the ones that are a bit more thought out and planned out, are going to hang in there and survive. And look, in their favour, they're probably going to snap up some good opportunities. For the ones that were running on shoestring budgets and just got into business when they probably shouldn't have, they're going to be making some tough decisions at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, mate. And just as I was talking with Paul about that, we were saying how the market's actually oversaturated, and this is a really good opportunity for the market to open up again, and prices increase just to really blow over exactly what we spoke about.
Yep.
Something really interesting you said before, that you said some cafes are thriving. I'd love for you to elaborate further on, enlightening us what these cafes are doing and how they could, maybe not like in a super in-depth detail, but how are these cafes thriving, and what things are they putting into place to give people ideas? And I'm sure there's a couple of people who own businesses or work in businesses around here that are on the live that are kind of on they're looking at their last couple of weeks. I think a lot of shops are. So, I think any advice you can give them will be super helpful.
Yeah, well, I think the quickest thing that anyone could do that kind of saved them was to pull their head out of the sand. I'm not saying people have done that, but I think a lot of people were just hanging on, and they were denying what was going on until the last minute. And I think, look, it was weird because we all got surprised by it. I think a couple of weeks ago, I was laughing at people, buying tons of toilet paper, and then here we are now, like kind of thinking, do we have enough? But look, a lot of them just they had a good infrastructure whereby they had a really good social media presence, and it was very quick and easy for them to start communicating to everyone. They really leaned down the business. So if there was a bunch of people that needed to be stood down, and it was as unfortunate as it was for the survival of the business, some key decisions needed to be made. We've got clients that have multi-venue groups, so that they might have 2 or 3 spots, and they were very conscious of the ones that they did not think were going to be able to drum up enough business, and they put all their focus on the ones that were in the good locations that would. For example, a lot of the venues in the burbs, they were typically doing a lot better because a lot of the CBD locations, they were one of the first, I guess, for people to push out and start working from home. So, you got people in offices and all that sort of stuff. They typically went and moved and went straight into working from home. So they were immediately hitting up their locals. So the cafes that they were hitting up on the weekend, well, all of a sudden they were going there and grabbing beans and that sort of stuff. So we've had one closed down completely that had a big CBD presence. He was telling me they did, about 80 kilos of retail coffee last week by drop shipping in collaboration with their roaster. Now, they got rid of everything they had out of their garage, and then they started drop shipping. So reaching out to every network that they had socially, whether through their friends and families, and, those people all needed coffee. And then basically took orders, collabed with their roasters, and their roasters were basically sticking coffee in bags and shipping it off. People are still drinking coffee, of course. People still want to support their locals. it just depends on how strong that relationship was with the local community, I think. And, you know, it is hard. It is very hard. And the ones I think that are most affected are the ones that are in business centres, or when I say business centres, locations where the predominantly just a business client base. But the other ones, the ones out in the burbs typically doing a lot better. And seeing a big transformation as well. We've had clients that just started up business in various locations a couple of weeks ago. Now they've very quickly transformed their model. They're not just selling coffee, you know, they're selling, I think I saw that you guys were doing it at High Road, you're also selling avocados and milk and bread. People don't want to go into supermarkets and, you know, be in those situations where there's a bunch of people grabbing stuff. They want to go and shop leisurely and at least do stuff when there's not a bunch of congestion with respect to people. So, and they do want to support their local cafe. If there is that relationship, if they do feel that, and a lot of people I think they do want to go and they will pay $1 more. I think getting a bit of the last chat around the price of coffee, you know, now is the best time to do, well, not now, but as soon as we get out of this, I think that the time will be that, you know, the time's right now where we can, you know, start putting a bit more of a price in line with the value in which we're really offering. You know, people aren't just going to cafe. Let's be straight. People aren't just going to cafes to support the cafe. They're also going to the cafe to have a chat. You know, people they're in jail in their homes at the moment. And they do want to go down and, you know, see some familiar faces and just sort of be made to feel that things are good. So yeah, look, a lot of business transformation in terms of the products that they are selling. So they're not just limiting stuff to coffee, or we're seeing ones that are, you know, doubling down on the coffee, really being a bit of a distribution channel between their roaster and the people that they sell to, you know, and they're reaching out that way. A lot have had, a bit of a mix in terms of the success they've had with their landlords. Some have, you know, yep, no worries, been able to get 2 or 3 months rent free. Some have had a bit of I guess, not a run in with the landlord, but the landlord's kind of blatantly said, no, go and seek government funding. And I think that's, you know, look, I don't know, we'll see what happens there, but hey?
The touchy subject, the landlord.
Yeah, it is. It is a touchy subject, and I think a lot of it just comes down to, I mean, I won't even say the relationship with the landlord, because I don't think much of the time there is one, but I think I've had a bunch of clients that just, you know, put in a request and it's like, yep, straight away, yep, no worries, and they've never even met their landlord. It's just, they're a solid business, they're a good business. The landlord would rather give someone a couple of months rent free or half rent than have an empty shop. And I think, yep, and have a bad tenant. Well, no one's going to rent, right, in retail. No one's going to rent anything. So there's mass exodus everywhere. So I think that's, look, a lot of success has been in that. But the big one is, you know, I mean, look, with my clients, I can't speak for others, but, you know, there's been constant communication, you know, whether it's me calling them calling, you know, us throwing webinars, jumping on stuff like this, live casts to get information, because the problem is there's a lot of fear out there, because there's sometimes, I won't say misinformation, but a lot of people are trying to report very quickly, and sometimes things get miscommunicated, I think, and people freak out. So having someone that's a soundboard, someone that, you know, understands and translates this information a bit better is where people are looking. So there's a lot of there's a need for a lot of leadership in the community, and I think, you know, good businesses with good leadership or someone that they can really call as an advisor have been a bit more fortunate to make the quicker decisions or hold off on some decisions based on kind of, you know, throwing things out to an advisory, you know, people that can give them some advice. And at the moment, everyone's asking advice of everyone else, and sometimes that can be more confusing than anything else. But you know, it's yeah, I mean, look, it's a weird one. It's hard, but you know, people are getting through it, I think, and it's all about simplification right now. Survival and simplification. Don't try and go too crazy. Work within what you can do. Bring your costs down as much as possible. Look, there's a whole heap of things that you can do basically to try and move into preservation mode. And one of those sometimes is is closing the doors for a time being. And like I said, there's been some success with some of my clients that have been able to do it based on their location, because it's just not, they just can't open and run takeaway, even though they may have been predominantly takeaway before. But yeah, should we read from some of these questions?
Yeah, I would love to. I think this is a really good question from Paul, who was just on the cast.
Is that Bristol man? Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
How do cafe owners have the conversation with landlords, and what's the best way to approach it?
Yeah, well, the worst way to approach it is to not make the call at all. So let me start by saying that. I think a lot of people just assume too much and a bit fearful of just, the worst thing that can be said is no.
Yep.
Let me tell you how we've been doing it. So some of our clients have just been reaching out via phone or email. We've been assisting and jumping in, writing a letter on behalf of our clients. So we've put together a bit of a letter template, and I mean it's written by an accountant for a client, so it's a bit different to use in terms of writing it for yourself. But sometimes you need a bit of heavy hitting behind you to make the situation a bit more serious than what it is. And of course,
tangible information, right? Some numbers.
Not even. We're just, it just comes from a position of a bit more, not power. I don't want to say that, but I think when people see a letter come from a third party, they kind of take it a bit more seriously. They kind of take it a bit more serious when your accountant's stepping up for you and saying, "Hey, I've got the inside knowledge into the business, and give these guys a bit of a break." So look, we're approaching it from a few different angles. There's no cookie cutter approach to it. Just have a crack, just ask, and you can have a couple of shots at it as well. So don't assume, I should just go and get help from the government, or they're just going to say no, or how about them? They've got a mortgage. There's a lot of assistance out there. The government are helping people from businesses from a mortgage point of view, funding point of view. They can freeze stuff. Like I said, they would rather keep you for a very long time. A lot of cafe owners have long leases. And the last thing a landlord would want to do is cut that off completely. So,
yeah. So would you say, correct me if I'm wrong, most cafes with the landlords actually have a slight amount of leverage during this time as well, seeing as no one's going to take that tenancy anytime soon. So if they actually give them relief for at least a certain amount of time, at least the landlord has the security that this person's going to eventually pay them up, because I don't think anyone's going to be snapping up a really good spot anytime soon. So
no way.
I think obviously not being rude about it, but like that's probably a really positive thing, like having to know that no one else is going to take your spot if you can't pay for it. I've got another really good question here from Jan.
Cool. And look,
tell me about that.
Yeah, I think, I what I wouldn't recommend is anyone to throw threats out and all that sort of stuff, because it just gets really, let's put it this way. This could all blow over in a couple of months. It could blow over in 3 weeks. We don't know. What kind of relationship do you want to have with your landlord, once this all happens? And, just because you've got a long lease doesn't mean you've got doesn't mean you don't have a rent review coming up soon in the next year or so, or a couple of years. So let's be very professional about it. Be totally honest about it. If the landlord doesn't understand your situation, then, I think there's some serious issues there, and I think would be a bit wrong to assume that. But just be very professional. Get the help if you need to go in and get someone else to come in and bat for you. But just remember as well that they don't owe you anything. It's a transactional relationship where you're renting. They're providing the space and everything else. But just remember that what you do and how you act right now, them and you, will affect that ongoing lease relationship in the future. And we obviously want a very good relationship or a lease with our landlords, because in the event that we want to sell and move on and do whatever and move on to bigger and better things, we need to make sure that we've got a great lease that we can transfer over. Otherwise, that'll break the sale, and our asset, what we've got and what we've been building and busting our ass for, might be worth nothing. So, just be mindful. Yeah, let's move on to the next one.
Any incentives from government or for businesses to keep staff employed?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, some stuff was leaked yesterday around this kind of UK style, I'll call it, or a Danish style government coming to bat for people that have lost their jobs. It's really hard to comment on that at the moment because the government wasn't actually supposed to announce it until Tuesday, believe it or not. So I'm really fortunate that one of my good mates is a minister in the government. He's an assistant treasurer to Josh Frydenberg. Now, I can't even get information from him because stuff's just coming out into the media quicker than it's coming out from other sources. But my understanding is there's like all of this is just being clarified because, as you know, none of this stuff is planned, right? It's happening like that quick. So we'll wait and see what happens on Tuesday. I don't want to speculate, but look, the word is, and we've got to understand how they're going to do it. So if they are going to do it, how they're going to do it. So the UK system, while it sounds really good, has got some problems because their welfare system typically isn't as good or as easily managed or accessible like ours. And we know ours is that good, and Centrelink crashed, MyGov crashed when, last week. But in terms of, the stimulus, obviously we had first round of stimulus that came out, which is, kind of that safety net, second round as well that came out, which is now what we consider the actual one. And that's where businesses are being, essentially given a bit of a holiday on paying any tax that they withhold from employees to leave that money back in the business so that can be paid to keep employees in a job. It's a weird one. Some businesses won't get any of that money. Some businesses don't have that money stored just because the way businesses handle their cash provisioning and how much money they put aside to pay the we'll call it a BAS, the business activity statement, every time, they pay the tax that they've withheld from employees over to the government. So it's going to be a weird one. I don't think it's going to be a blanket solution to everyone where it's like, yeah, great, employees are all going to stay employed. And that's probably why they've come out with this one as well. And it doesn't solve the issue with people that have been stood down. And unfortunately, we saw a lot of people that were in that spot where they haven't lost their jobs. They've just been stood down, which means they basically don't get paid. Now, they do accrue leave. They do get their public holiday pay when those ones come in, as we'll see next week with Easter. But they're left without anything. They don't get any pay. So Fair Work allows an employer to stand their employees down. Look, my advice to my clients has been really bespoke. It's been based on the business. We want to keep people employed as much as possible because we know that we're planning businesses to come out stronger, and they don't want to have to go out and they don't want to lose really good people. So we're working on a bunch of different stuff where these people can still get a bit of pay, use up leave and all sorts of stuff. I mean, casual's really hard for them because they have no entitlements because they're typically paid a leave, loading on their hourly rate. But I won't go too deep into that one. The incentives, like I said, we'll see what comes out on Tuesday, whether that money is going to be paid directly to businesses or directly to the people that have lost their jobs or been stood down. It'll be really interesting. Obviously, if it goes to employees directly, well, it's not going to help the business at all. The money that's going to be going to businesses at the moment, it's really hard to say how much of a positive impact it's going to make on cash flow. And who that's going to go to, if it's going to go to landlords, if it's going to go, it depends on the business owner and how they work in with their advisors to make sure that they kind of map stuff out. But the incentives are there. I know for a fact anyone in Victoria, Dan Andrews came out and announced over the weekend, up to 10 grand for Victorian businesses affected by COVID-19, which is pretty much, I reckon, anyone in Victoria on this call. So Victoria's been really good. They've been launching, sort of leading the way in the stimulus, and a lot of states have followed suit, which is nice to know. The Tassie government came out. There's a really good package out there where they're helping businesses get business continuity advice and cash flow advice. Now they're basically funding that. So all my Tassie clients, don't be afraid to reach out. But look, it's at the moment, until the money hits the bank account, it's really hard to say how effective that is. And that's the thing. It's like all very political to announce it, but then we've got to get that money coming through. So all the stuff that the government's been talking about, it's not going to hit bank accounts till a month from now. So, how do you survive for that month? I know a lot of businesses are hand to mouth and they might not have all that cash, but you know, let's wait and see. There are incentives out there, both federal and state. What I suggest is, you know, go straight to your accountant on this one. If they don't know and they're not up to date with what's going on, then you might want to think about, you know who. Yeah, well, you know, and look, you know, it's not a self plug, but I guess I've got a plug too. We're in business here, and we're here to help. But you know, I'm doing 15-minute free chats for people just to clarify a couple of things for people. You know, it's just my way of helping an industry that I, you know, tremendously and publicly care about. You know, it's you know, people thought I was mad when I said I want to specialize in the coffee space, and you know, maybe I am, but it's it really is the yeah, well, they really are an important part of our communities, and we don't want to see them fall over. So yeah, look, reach out, get some help. But if your accountant's not helping you, then yeah, look, all those years, you know, that person's probably been all right for some stuff, but not right for the stuff, you know, the times when you need them the most. And how do you know they're right? They're all up with it. You know, they're up with the times. They know exactly what's going on. They're talking about business continuity plans. They're talking about mapping out your cash flow, because this is the stuff you've got to be doing right now. And I'm not talking about mapping out cash flow for the next year. I'm talking about for this week, for next week, for the week after that. You know, what do you have to do right now? Who do you have to call? What calls do you need to make in your business to ensure that those doors stay open, that you don't crash and burn? And don't wait for this government to come in and bring out hibernation things that we're all kind of, oh, what's that mean? And, you know, like, pretend that there's no stimulus. Act as if there's no stimulus, but obviously work with what you know right now. And, you know, plan around that and implement as you know, to the T of making sure the dollars you spend and the dollars you make are around that. Because the only thing you can control right now is how much you spend and you know, what fixed costs are coming out of your business right now. And it's just, it really is survival. And you've got to make some tough decisions, but you know, you need to be able to communicate or get the right advice from the people that you pay. And you're going to, you know, there's going to be some people looking to you, this is business owners, for leadership to make sure that, you know, you tell them everything's going to be okay, or you give them some timelines of stuff that's going on. So, yes.
Ben, I'm 100% with that. And I really hope any cafe owners or managers or even baristas in cafes suggest talking to their accountants, because that's something that I haven't really thought too much about, but makes total sense, because this is exactly the specialty of that. And I don't feel there's any shame in self-plugging. There's definitely a reason why I got you onto this, because I want people to understand that it's awesome that we can make great coffees. We can give people the best experiences of their life, but without an accountant, without the right advice, and without the right leadership, inside a cafe or inside any business, it's just not possible. If you just, and I think a really good point you actually just brushed over, but I actually think this is really important. The only constraints you can actually control at the moment as a business is what you're spending and your fixed costs. And if you actually really expand on that, there's so many things you can either freeze, move, change, cut. You know, there's actually a lot within those two statements that are actually worth looking into. And I think obviously this is exactly where you want your accountant and some leaders to collaborate together on something like this, to really make that space survive on the shortest caliber possible without using too much or burning out too much of your resources. So I think that's kind of what I've gathered from this. And I think I agree with you. I wasn't actually aware of the government, you know, incentives, stimuluses. Like, I've done a fair bit of research into what a casual worker can do, and we'll touch a little bit more on that. But I think what's more important is, what does a cafe do? Because this is so much more. There's so many more people involved, and there's so many more things that are moving parts. Instead of someone just applying, saying they got stood down, there's so many more complexities and stuff. Man, I think you got probably 5 more minutes, man, if you wanted to, if there's anything we haven't covered or you think is really worth covering, I think we should definitely go through that, man.
Yeah, look, you know, is this a black swan? I'm just reading from this, you know, well, the thing is, like, I'm 38 years old. My parents haven't even experienced anything like this, right? So, this is as random as it gets. I was working in London through the GFC, in financial markets in a hedge fund in one of the most kind of crazy and volatile kind of investment settings. It's nuts. Nothing prepares you for this stuff other than experience, and foresight. And, the stuff that, say, your boss, Sasha, and Sasha and I can't believe that, it was not even a month ago that we got back from the last leg of that in Hobart. And it was funny. The whole chat was around growth and, this and sustainability and what you need to do. And it's incredible of how much of that is now probably ringing true in everyone's head. Having clarity is the most important thing that everyone on this call can have right now. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner, you're an individual, or you're a salary earner. You need to have complete clarity over what's coming in and what's going out, and then trying to control what you can control, because there's no point trying to control anything else, and trying to pick the most important things and going hammer and tong at them to try and control those things. Now, if you're a business, it's obviously around what's going out your bank, what's going out of your bank account, especially if nothing's coming in, and it's come to that, unfortunately. If nothing's coming in, well, you need to be incredibly creative of how you start getting stuff in, some money into the business. And there's a heap of stuff that you need to do. If you need to resort to selling, certain things, well, go ahead and do it, right? There's no pride in this. It's not about pride anymore. It's about survival. But clarity is the most important thing here. And, you guys will know, whoever was on the tour saw that I bang on about clarity, control, and confidence. Having that clarity over where you're going, where your business is going, and the numbers is unbelievably important right now. Controlling every single element of your business. And, control means getting on the phones, talking to your bank. Banks are giving mortgages. I can call up my bank right now and get a 6-month delay, 6-month holiday on my mortgage. If people are in this place, they should be doing it. Are they speaking to their bank to see if they're getting access to a line of credit or a bank overdraft or something? Because the help is out there and the government is working hard to do that. So having the clarity into understanding, cool, am I going to run out of money? Cool, when's that going to be? And what can I do right now to try and shore that up, try and fund that, trying to block that gap, that gap in my business. And my life personally, because outside of the business, we're also people that have commitments and all that sort of stuff. And then controlling every element of it. And then having that confidence. You all know that I bang on about confidence. Who's going to give you more confidence than someone that knows what they're talking about and can guide you through the decision making, right? I'll leave it up to everyone to understand who that person might be. Might be a mentor, might be their accountant, might be, a supplier that's got some really good business experience that's been there and done that. It might be a group of people, but, get those 3 things. So get the clarity, get the control, and try and seek some confidence out of the decision making that you're making. Don't fly blind. Please don't just make decisions based on what you're seeing on social media. Try and get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, as possible. Are we considered social media? We probably are. Shit, I think I just, yeah. But you know what I mean.
No,
right? Like, this is this is general advice, right? So what you need is specific advice. And if you've got an accountant and all that sort of stuff, chances are that they're invested in you as much as you're invested in them as a supplier. So, don't be fearful of paying for this or anything, because if they lose you as a client, then they have no client, right? They're cutting off their own income stream as well. So they're invested in making sure that you as a client are, you get out of this and you get out strong, and they help you grow through this. So, talk about business continuity planning, talk about mapping out a basic cash flow, and all this sort of stuff. And I know personally, we've dropped a lot of our pricing down and simplified what we're doing for our clients, because we just want them to get it done, right? We just want them to get through this, because as you know, we've got a massive exposure to the hospitality space. It affects us and our business as well. And it's not about being selfish, but we want to make sure that we all get through this as a wider community. Anyone on the tour saw how I speak about my impact ripple. This is what it's all about. It all starts with us. We've got to be as solid as possible.
And I definitely agree with that. And
yeah,
probably just to cover off before I say bye, I think the thing I took the most out of this is some really solid, hard points is you need to have clarity with the whole situation and what's going on. And you really need to focus in on your fixed costs and spending overall. And all of these things tie into each other. You need to be realistic and be creative, and also, throw away the pride. It's about surviving. And I think to cap this off, if you haven't already spoken to your accountant, bloody do it.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If you Oh, we lost connection. I'm really sorry. I think we probably maxed out the live video, I would say. Sorry guys, maxed out the live video for sure. Let's try again. I'll probably... we'll wait for D-Train. We were just finishing off with Nadi. He is offering 15-minute free consultations. I will be giving some more details on that very soon, so it'll be worth checking it out and sending him a message and reaching out. He's got nothing but good things to say. Thank you so much for your time, Nadi. I'm sorry we didn't really get to say goodbye. I think we maxed out the the time on this Stutzer. I'm probably just waiting for D-Train now. Come on. Sorry guys, just waiting on, yep, links in note. Thanks for that, thanks for joining. Thanks Nadi, I really appreciate that, mate. And D-Train is here.
I decided to go solo for a second.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, cool. Don't worry about it.
Just gonna have a chat to myself.
Yeah, man, it's cool. It's cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it would just chopped out because we probably maxed out the time. But let's reintroduce what's happening. If anyone's just joined, we are discussing current events and aspects of our industry that are affected and things you can do. We have D-Train, the #1 ranked brewer of Australia this year, and the only person I know that scored a 100-point coffee in Brewers Cup. An absolute brew god. But not only is he really good at making coffee, he is a trader, and from what I believe, was based in Melbourne, just moved to Adelaide, correct?
Yeah, moved here a week ago.
Awesome. I'll let you introduce yourself. Who you are, what do you do, what have you done, and we'll get the conversation going after that.
As Henny said, I'm David, currently living in Adelaide, South Australia, just moved here a week ago. I work for Langdon Coffee Merchants as a green bean trader in sales. What I've done is barista, roaster, account manager, trainer, quality control in Sydney, London, Germany, and Melbourne over 15 years, I think. 16 years, no, 15 years. So in coffee years, I'm quite old.
Nice. Man, that's amazing. I didn't know how many things you've done, so it's lovely to know these things. How are you doing during this time?
In all honesty, fairly similar, I think, to everyone. There's no certainties. There's no rhythm. There's no pattern to any of this. This is, I think, Nadia was saying, like it's something that none of us have really been through. So I'm still technically employed, which is great, and it's I'm in a luckier position than most. But yeah, still literally taking it day by day. How are you?
I'm great, man. I've had some really inspiring chats over the last hour, and also over the last maybe 2 or 3 days. Really had a lot of time to check in with myself, and a lot of things that I've wanted to do, I've started doing. So overall, it's been a really good time. But yeah, I want to know from you, give us a scope. What is trading like right now? And then we'll dive. There's so many more things I want to ask within that question, but maybe I'll just let you kick that off. What is it like right now?
Well, mostly at the moment, we're just trying to relay information between either our export partners or producers at origin, and then obviously the people that we sell coffee to here. But it's actually more of a sort of we're trying to mitigate as much loss as possible because obviously, apart from the health issues that we have right now, there's a huge economical crisis that's happening. I'll get to that in a second. We're just trying to sort of work with our pre-existing customers and try to understand what their needs are, what their issues are, how we can possibly help them, and then try to forecast literally the most feasible way that they can survive, and also that we can survive and the people that we buy our coffee from can survive. So it's pretty deep. I can't read the whole question from Yanina.
I can't either. But maybe just start the strategies to bring 2020 harvest in. Just start with that, and then.
And what kind of conditions? Yeah, I think maybe it says like what kind of conditions are you looking to balance the books. Would that be correct, Yanina? Yeah. Well, strategies for 2020 harvest is we've already pre-committed to some stock, which we're going to buy because we've pre-committed to it and we can't back out of it, to put it into place with clients. Okay. And so in all honesty, we're not looking for much growth because we know quite a lot of people are not going to survive what's happening in terms of business wise. And conditions that we're putting into place with clients. Now that's a really hard question because obviously cash flow is unfortunately the one thing that makes the world go round. So obviously we, like a roaster, you sell coffee to a cafe, they need to pay their bills. We sell coffee to a roaster, they need to pay us. We need to pay the importing, the insurance, the warehousing, the quality control, the exporting, the producing, etc. So at the moment, we're looking to just firstly understand what our customer needs. Try to have like an honest, realistic conversation with them, saying, do you really feel like, if you've committed to a container of a certain coffee, do you feel like you'll be able to fulfill those needs? But we are going to be, unfortunately, a little stricter on our paying conditions, mainly because we can't afford not to pay the people that we buy our coffee from either. So we won't be doing any new sort of financing, if that makes sense. So anyone that comes on board that wants credit terms, it's not going to happen. We're going to, obviously, the people that we are buying from, the people that we sell to, sometimes we do give them a little leeway in their terms. We might maybe let them increase it by $1,000 or increase it by a week, depending on cash flow or quieter times of the year. We won't be able to do that now. If anything, we're going to be pretty strict. And unfortunately, I think that's the same thing that roasters should be doing to the cafes that they supply. In a horrible way, the money needs to be flowing. And I watch the exchange rate every single day, probably too often. I watch the exchange rate. So basically, for those of you that don't know, the way that the coffee is traded really is in US dollars. So basically, every time we buy coffee, we're hoping that the conversion rate is going to be really, really good. And we might look to buy a certain amount of currency at that exchange rate and then lock in contracts. But in case you haven't noticed or you're not paying any attention, the Australian dollar has dropped quite significantly. So basically that means all green that is being contracted now has a minimum of a 20% increase. So minimum of 20% then means, obviously, for a roaster, you've got to put into your wages, the margin that we put in for the importation, your moisture loss, etc. And Paul's asked about the producers. Am I allowed to swear on this? I guess we're all adults here. They're shitting some fucking bricks, mainly because they're producing coffee currently, but they don't know if they're going to be able to sell it, and so it's like if you're a cafe, and I'm assuming most people that are listening to this work as a barista or in a cafe, it's like making 20 lattes and someone not coming to pick them up or pay for them, and you're just going to keep making lattes. So the producers are obviously a little bit paranoid in terms of, will they be able to sell their coffee? How much can they sell it for? Is it going to be worth producing the coffee? Because right now in green, it's buying season as well. So it's the busiest time of year for us. We're buying coffees from all over the world, and there's a lot of people that are unfortunately not going to be able to sell coffee to us. I haven't made one in a while, Yanina. I don't know what a latte is, there's some pretty big issues happening.
Yeah.
And also just to butt in, also not only that about the selling the coffee part is a lot of these people live in really remote parts of the world with next to no healthcare, and if anything happens to them in terms of their health, they don't have the luxuries that we have, like we do here in Australia. So they're obviously two factors. One, are they going to be able to sell their coffee? Two, are they going to be healthy enough to survive?
Yeah, so I think it's obviously super scary times being a producer because they don't have the security of, or maybe some won't have the security of their lots being secure and bought. Something I was curious about, how has shipment, I know around green bean trading and buying, sometimes it is quite difficult to get traceability, and also, even coffee moved around. With the virus, has shipping and moving coffee around actually been harder?
Not yet, but it will. So logistics is probably the biggest pain in the ass when it comes to green. There's things that we just cannot control, but so far we haven't had any issues with exporting coffee, mainly because it takes, from Brazil it's like 45 days into Melbourne. So coffees have already left before a lot of the sanctions have happened. But if you look at India right now, India's in a lockdown for the next month. We buy coffee from India, but they're not shipping right now. Colombia in a lockdown, but it's between harvests, so it's not the end of the world for them technically. But we haven't felt it yet, and also because a lot of the countries that we buy coffee from, or where coffee is produced, it's their major export, or one of them. So, their governments are wanting to make sure that they can ship their coffees. But it's been relatively positive in that aspect. We haven't had much in terms of logistical issues yet.
Beautiful. What do you foresee the next couple of months looking like as a green bean trader?
The next couple of months are going to be some really difficult ones in terms of the people that I talk to or that I deal with, in terms of is their business going to survive? Is there anything that I can possibly do? But I think for us as an industry, we will have a pretty quiet few months, in all honesty. Like everyone, if there's no coffee being made, then there's no coffee being roasted. If there's no coffee being roasted, there needs to be no coffee to be sold, etc. But our buying practice, or the hardest thing with buying, is when we buy coffee, we buy it for a year. So if we don't buy Kenyans this year, which we are, but if we don't, we won't see Kenyans until June, July, August 2021. That's a whole crop
so you
year.
buy the whole harvest, and that's enough to last you for the year.
Well, it's also because of the buying season, so they only have one harvest a year. So if it doesn't ship now, it's never going to ship.
Okay.
So we'll.
If the commerce shuts down, like all the shipping and stuff like that, what do you think? Obviously, we're not going to be able to make coffees, or is there going to be a limited amount of time that we will have to be able to make coffees? Like, is there some sort of plan put in place whether, if that happens, what's kind of the plan?
Well, if that happens, we're going to have to roast some old coffees. coffees that people have in their warehouses that might be slightly starting to age, or I don't work for an overly large importer. There are some pretty big importers in Australia, and they might have a little bit more in their warehouses which they can sort of hold on to and to filter through in the off season. We don't have that luxury. So I think that if we're not going to be getting any coffee, there is obviously coffee still in Australia. It just might not be the tastiest coffee.
Yeah, well, obviously as it gets older, some not ideal qualities start to come into the coffee. With most people in the specialty coffee kind of understanding them as woodiness and lack of vibrancy and whatnot. So I think a lot of us I would call myself a general barista person, starting to understand these things are actually really important. And I think it's really important for people to understand that, coffee does need to be fresh and at all stages, or rested or aged, or has a quality point where it needs to be roasted. Paul's asked the question, will buyers commit to farm gate prices to stop the impact of coffee being on the market?
I hope so. We would, and we do. But when you're buying coffee, it's not always up to us that makes the decision. We don't just buy and then secure lots and then try and sell it as spot. When we buy coffee, we try to have as much of it pre-committed as possible to make it a financially viable scenario. And I hope people will be more willing to pay for farm gate prices. But it's a massive risk that I don't think a lot of roasters or buyers are willing to pay. Because once you have decided to buy it then and there, once it leaves the farm, then it's your responsibility to get it into Australia. It's your responsibility to look after it. So if you're doing it free on board or freight on board, that's once the coffee gets to the docks, and then it's our responsibility from there to get it into Australia.
I have a question here. Can you explain farm gate, please?
Farm gate is essentially the price that you pay literally as the coffee would leave the farm. So if you're buying coffee, obviously every part of the supply chain obviously costs money. So you're basically paying for the coffee as it is from the producer or from the farm gate. You then take the responsibility financially to then have to make sure it gets put into a truck from the mill, taken to the warehouse, sorted correctly into the containers, put into the ship, and then brought into the country.
Is that scoring as well involved in that?
Well, obviously people are not going to want to buy farm gate regional blenders necessarily. This is generally more for you really sort of your higher end lots, or people that are producing people that are supporting single producers.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks for that information, man. I actually had no idea about farm gate either, so I definitely learned something.
You as the roaster essentially give more money to the producer or the farmer, but you then also have a higher risk because you need to make sure that you can get the coffee here, or at least onto the container.
And I guess there's a lot of complications around that as
yes.
well.
We had a full container load of Mexican coffee last year stolen from when it left the farm to on the way to the docks. So I
don't know how you steal a container. That's pretty crazy, but it's a big heist. There's been some nice coffee there.
They were some good coffees actually, really good Mexicans. But yeah, there's obviously you then take the risk as a roaster.
Is there an alternative to farm gate buying?
Air freight. Pay for it and chuck it on the air freight yourself, which is obviously not financially viable right now or ever really. But I think farm gate is hopefully the future of coffee. But you still need people, I guess, like importers or exporters to help you secure that coffee and to get it into the country.
Is Farmgate something that's new? How long has this been around for?
No, I think people have been buying coffee directly from the farm for years. In Australia, we're just, so I'm just reading through all the comments. Quality storage is super important. Yes, it is. We know, luckily, some people have climate controlled warehouses, not plugging anyone. But anyways, Farmgate in America has been happening for ages. Like in the States, you can literally fly down to the farm, visit them on the weekend and fly back. So you lock in contracts then and there. In Australia, we're so isolated and it takes so long to get here. It's really only sort of been the past couple of years that people are starting to push that. Yanina's saying single origins might disappear for a little while. Yes, I would agree. There's going to be less micro lots being bought this year.
And obviously this is going to be affecting a lot of the competitions that are happening around as well. Obviously you being a seasoned competitor and ready to go. How does this affect maybe someone looking to compete and moving, trying their luck in a competition? And when do you think the competition was actually going to happen?
I think the hardest thing with trying to secure some competition lots right now is you need to understand the producers are obviously worried as well that they're not going to sell their coffee. They're also, extremely busy people. So coffee is going to cost more money. I know now that if I was to buy a competition grade coffee from some of the producers I bought coffee from, it's going to cost me about $10 a kilo extra just because of the actual conversion rate, a kilo. And when these coffees are costing $100 plus a kilo, it's not really cheap. I think these kinds of producers, though, they will be safe. If that makes sense. People are still going to be willing to pay for these kinds of coffees. These really, really high-end competition grade coffees.
Trust and the rapport with the specialty coffee community to produce really high quality coffees, whether depending virus or no virus. I think to get back on subject as well, another question I had is the coffee market price. What has it done recently? Has it been affected by the virus, and how does that affect your job?
Well, we don't hedge on the C market. So we're not a global trading company that kind of buys futures and trades, but the C market or the coffee market still dictates the way that coffee is generally priced. So, when you're dealing with a farm or an exporter, they'll have what's called a diff or differential, and that's like they'll say, okay, so our differential is like 80 cents above the market for March terminal or May terminal, sorry. So when coffee, that's when the C market's at May, it's like 130 or whatever at the moment. So coffee will be 210 cents a pound. When the market obviously drops down or up, they might decide to either increase or decrease their diffs, which is essentially their cut of the coffee. The C market has been up and down like a yo-yo. I think yesterday it was down by 7%, but it also jumped 30 cents since the beginning of the year, which was a really good thing because it was so dramatically low, and it was starting to get higher. But it's still, I think my personal belief is it's going to pick up quite significantly, and then it's going to crash as a lot of producers or countries are holding stock. It'll then eventually flood the market and then drop the C market again, which is not a good thing.
Damn, crazy. I just want to know, obviously we only have about 5 minutes left, but what things do you think a general public or people from our industry need to know about what you do during this time that's going to be important for, just information or communication to the customer or anything around that? What do you think is important for us to know right now?
I think along the supply chain is, let's say at the cafe level, if you're a cafe owner, listen to what your roaster is telling you. If they're a reputable roaster, I should say, listen to what's going on with them, how they're buying their coffee or who they're buying their coffee from, or maybe what's impacting them. And then for us, really, for me, it's about understanding what the people I look after, what they need from me, if I can help them at all. And to be honest, sometimes I'm just asking if they need a mate to chat, because a lot of these people are really good friends of mine. But they, information takes a long time to filter down the chains, and we as importers, we're giving as much as we can to the roasters, but we don't know. We have no idea. We're listening. A lot of my job is actually just listening to either world reports or understanding the market, the currency, etc. So it's trying to understand information to relay onto people, so they can then understand it and try and make a better decision for their business and their future.
Yeah, so staying informed is probably the most important thing right now, is actually trying to understand as much as possible so you can take the right steps forward in general.
Yeah, I mean, any roaster that's listening to this, any roaster that's listening to this is like, hit up, whoever you're buying from and ask them, what's going on. Are you, what origins might we not be buying from this year, or what are we looking at as our forecast, etc. So it's just literally open the lines of communication. Yeah. 100%, mate. If there's no, if there's no cafes to make coffee, no cafes to make coffee. So, sorry, you there? What I was going to say is, if there's no cafes to make coffee, there's obviously, they can't employ people, but those cafes can't support the roaster. The roaster can't support, the importer. The importer can't support either the exporter or the producer. But more importantly is the producer then has pickers or workers that they employ, who unfortunately maybe don't have the highest level of education or any access to healthcare. And it's them that are going to suffer more than we.
I think really understand that as well. I think it's a really good point, is that it have all of these and a lot of helping hand, and I think if there's any way possible that we can, support these farmers, and I know there's definitely some really good green bean buyers out there that really do put more than money into the farms and moving them forward in terms of increasing quality. I think it's quite a scary time to think that, all this hard work that's been put in from you guys could be all lost. So do you think
Yeah, man, it is heartbreaking.
what that could mean for a following harvest? Do you think there's going to be less coffee available because there's going to be less farms, or do you think, what do you think the harvest of 2021 is going to look like?
Well, I think Yanina said it quite well the other day. She was, I think, with the same cup She was talking about how producers have been dealing with this shit for years. They've been dealing with inconsistent crop years and inconsistent this and, inconsistent buyers or inconsistent people buying their coffee. And they've worn it. And, we now are shitting bricks because we might not be able to buy the greatest grade 1 Ethiopians this year. But but ramifications will be that if they can't sell it now and there's no certainty what's going to happen with the future, what is the point for them to try and produce something that is going to be a higher grade or higher quality when they could just send it to market, for the C price? Because, some money is better than no money. I can still hear you, man, so it's all good. Yeah, you too, mate. As soon as these borders are open. Well, I think I've lost you, but hopefully I'll be able to brew. Yeah, and hopefully I'll be able to brew with you on stage sometime soon. But yeah, I mean, there's a few more important things first than Brewster competitions. Look after yourself, man, and look after your family and your loved ones.
Thank you, man. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Blasted. How dare you? One more person roast me about using my data. I've been using my data the whole time. I've just switched phones, okay? I mean, I was prepared for this. I was very prepared to have my phone cook out. I think it just got really hot because we've been living for the past hour and a half. So thank you so much, David Train, for the chat. I really do appreciate that. My brew ratio is 1:15. 5 pours, 45 grams, 15 grams of coffee. Enjoy it. Yanina is our next. Yanina is our next guest. If she can request to jump in or get chatting, hopefully. Yanina. Nope. Just to recap, we've had Paul, Nadi, and D-Train have a really beautiful chat about what's going on. Hey, Jan. How you doing?
How are you, mate?
So good, mate. Thank you for the roasting. Really appreciate that. I was actually, it took a while for someone to roast me, so I was pretty surprised. It took an hour and a half for someone to roast me. So
that's a record. That's a personal record for you.
Amazing. All right, for everyone who's already watching, I'll quickly introduce Yanina, how I know her. Yanina, for me, is one of the biggest leaders in our industry, disregarding gender completely, but also is a beautiful advocate for women in coffee. And I do look up to her, and I think she's just a really positive thing for our industry, and she's a great voice for all the voices that are unheard in all around the coffee chain, not just in what we know. Amazing barista. She's the one who got me into specialty coffee. She's the one that kind of got me here. Without Yanina hiring me in a cafe, I don't think I would be anywhere near here. Probably the worst decision she ever did.
Yeah, my fault. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, rest in peace. Anyways, Yanina, introduce yourself. Who you are, what do you do, where you're going, what you've done.
Okay. Hi, I'm Yanina. Originally Argentinian, now Australian citizen this year. I started working with coffee 10 years ago when I first arrived to Australia. And I've been a barista head barista, and now I'm a green coffee buyer for Project Origin. So I work a lot closely with roasters now and producers.
Beautiful. How are you going during this time, and what have you been up to?
I have moments where I'm doing great and other moments when I'm not. But one positive thing that I can share is I actually really enjoy zombie movies a lot. And when I watch those kind of movies, you always have those moments when you're like, oh, why is this character being like this? Or why is this character being so negative? So whenever I feel bad about the current scenario, I try to think which kind of character I would like to be on those movies. And if I would like to be the person thinking about all the problems, or if I would like to be the person fixing and helping with the solutions. And I think the Minister of Health said it the other day. He said this is probably the worst year on people's lives. And that got me thinking a lot, because I was like, all right, if this is the worst year of my life, it's fine. You know, like I'm exactly. I'm lucky, I'm young, I'm healthy. I have a financially stable life, so I can use this time to really focus on helping others and really focus on giving back, and not overly stress myself with the negatives, but actually working on what I can do with the situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely a really good way to put it in just perspective as well when talking about the zombie movies and who's doing what and what are we doing. Unfortunately, it's not zombies. It's the shittest zombie apocalypse that's ever happened.
Yeah.
But someone mentioned that to me the other day, and I was like, oh, shit. You know, like, no one's out there shooting anyone down. We're just staying in our houses. And,
just in pajamas.
FaceTiming each other in pajamas, yeah. I definitely don't have pants on, so it's always a really good thing. I think, you know, D-Train talked a lot about the trading and buying. I think you have a really good insight because you do talk directly with a lot of farmers in specific countries. I'd love to maybe hear a story or two on them, and then we'll move into roasting, which is what we've mainly got you talking about. But I think I'd love to hear some, you know, maybe some conversations you've had with farmers if you have. If not, we can go straight into the roasting if you want to do that as well. So, but maybe just I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's been amazing. Again, there's a lot of negative things to say, and there's a lot of negative perspectives at this stage. There's a lot of quite scary predictions that we're doing, and we have to do them because it's our responsibility as like people who is handling the shipments and handling what coffees are going to come in. We need to be realistic about what's happening. But from the more like, I guess, broad perspective, I have been having a lot of conversations with producers, and one of the things that surprised me the most is their resilience and their capability to adapt to this current scenario. Many producers, I think pretty much all of them, have only shared positive messages with me. I try to give them as much information as possible about what's happening on this side of the coffee chain, and all they keep saying is like, it's okay, it's going to be fine, we'll work through it, we understand, this is difficult times. And I even share with one of them, some of you might have heard maybe of our farm in Nicaragua called El Árbol. I was talking with Claudia this week, and she did say to me that it's totally fine. She understands, you know, the difficulties, and we're going to overcome this. And I did say to her, like, you know what, I wish this happened in a different time of the year. I wish this happened, I don't know, like October, November, when already all the coffees would have been landed, where, you know, we would have a different way to approach this. But this happening right in the middle of when harvest finish, it means that now a lot of the pressure is being put on the producers, and it's so unfair. Because producers get paid once a year when they harvest, in the case of having just one harvest, and we are right at that time. And a lot of them have put a lot of effort and worked very hard since December until now. And I say that to her, and she was like, thank you so much for sharing that idea with me. I actually really appreciate it, but we think it's better that the coffees weren't landed yet. So then the risk is less for you guys. And I was like, how can she be saying this, you know? So that is really humbling. That is really amazing. And there's one big message I have with that, that is, this is the time to start listening to Origin, because we have always learned from them. They always have so much to teach us. I always said, we think we're passionate about coffee, and then you talk to producers, and I think that's being passionate about coffee, because many years they go without any profits, many years they go without making big margins. And I think that a lot of business owners on this side of the chain, if they wouldn't see those profits for 1 or 2 years in a row, they would probably abandon the industry. But producers are there, and they keep going, and they tell you how much they love it and how much they don't want to leave the farm. And I think there's a lot to learn about them at this stage. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that is happening with coffee producers right now.
Yeah, so we the community needs more stories, and we need more information about these things. Obviously, being in quite a positive mindset. I actually am unaware of the effect of the virus actually in most coffee growing countries. I haven't really heard too much. Are you aware of many countries that actually have the virus in them?
Yeah, well, most of the producing countries would have the virus in them. I guess the biggest concern at the moment is India. That's why India went on to lockdown, because it's the second biggest population in the world. And they're very scared of what's going to happen. Countries like Honduras, Colombia, we were even talking earlier in February and stuff, saying maybe this is a time to stop receiving so many buyers. Because this is getting, like a little bit scary right now. And those countries live on receiving buyers and sharing their coffees with them. So at this stage, the numbers don't look huge. But one thing we need to keep in mind is the numbers we see today are the result of what happened 2 weeks ago. So that's why it's important that people stop going out and stop. It's not about how many cases you see today. It's that the cases you see today are the product of 2 weeks ago. So I think we're going to see a little bit of a different perspective on producing countries, and we hope that their governments take the precautions they need to take for things to not escalate too much.
I think this is a really good segue into the roasting. How do you see the future of producing coffee and roasting in 6 months, 8 months, 12? Moving forward, how do you see it? Take a while to say you're not too sure, but I think it's good to see, maybe think of the worst case and best case scenarios. Or really nice.
Yeah, so funny enough, like before this whole thing blew up here in Australia, we had the idea that this was coming, and we called our partners like 2 weeks ago now, asking for plan A, plan B, plan C. So one of the things we suggested is like, okay, let's imagine ourselves on 30% less trade, 50% less trade, and 70% less trade. And when I say 70% less trade, a lot of people laugh. And they thought, that's no way it's going to happen. Like if that ever happens, we would have to close down. And this week, the harshest conversations were like a lot of people are already on plan C. A lot of people went down to 70%, some of them even 90%. So we went from let's make sure we have a plan to worst case scenario. So I think that we keep that same perspective for the future. From here to 6 months, we try to keep thinking the same. All right, let's imagine what happens if in May everything gets resolved. Let's imagine what happens if in September everything gets resolved. Let's imagine if this carries on to next year. So if everything gets better in May, that'd be great. A lot of importers will start shipping coffees that were harvest or finished harvest around February, March. I think that we'll see a lot of reactivation on the market. I say to roasters, at this stage, the people that might fail is the people that doesn't have a plan. The people with a plan is the people that is most likely to survive. That would be the best case scenario. May, we go back to normal, everything is fine, Aussie dollar recovers, that's great. We are still on time to save 2020 harvest. If things don't get better and we start seeing lockdown and roasting business stopping roasting coffee, and we carry on until something like September, we might start seeing a decrease on the coffees we can import. Because there's two things that are getting together right now. You have roasters who have forecast coffees to last them until April, May, when new harvest was meant to arrive. And now, because they have dropped their volumes now in March, a lot of those coffees are going to last them longer, right? So if those volumes don't increase again and they still doing lower volumes, what happens, even if in September you are ready to ship again, you're going to have a lot of roasters that will still have stock that they forecast to run out in May that is now going to run out in December maybe. So that's one complexity. So that means that if we can ship around September, we might be shipping now less coffees than we were going to originally ship. If things get absolutely terrible, we could potentially be considering a total loss of 2020 harvest. Now, the implications of that are absolutely terrible, of course. Sometimes there's this idea that, don't worry, producers will sell their coffee in their local market, but selling coffees in the local market has also a limit. You can't sell 100% of all the coffees in the local market, especially if the consumption of coffee globally is going down. So there's only so much that Nespresso can take, or like instant coffee companies can take. So you have to also be mindful of that it's not an easy solution as like, it's okay, I'll sell it on the local market. There might be no local market for those producers. So that would be the worst case scenario that I can see.
Cool.
There's not all bad, right? Like, for example, we were talking with Claudia today, and one of the things that El Arbol is already doing is like they starting to plant food right now. They already had a veggie patch that helps feed a lot of the workers there, but now they have increased it. They're working on it much harder, so at least the workers can have food to take home if the economy keeps getting bad. The good thing about origin countries is their climate, so they can grow food a lot better than we can here in Canberra. So that could be one, I guess, positive thing, right? Like, so it's not all absolutely apocalyptic, but losing 2020 harvest, it's going to have a huge impact on producers, definitely.
Well, again, it's going to come back to pushing everyone to become creative and become innovative during this time in ways to create more income or to survive for longer. Obviously, these ramifications going all the way back to the farm, if they're planting more food, it's really good to see that it's not, obviously it's going to be a case-to-case thing, but that's probably a really positive thing to hear that there is some sort of, it's almost a plan B, but it's like we're going to start putting things into place that are going to actually make us better in the future. I think something everyone will want to know, and everyone's on the line, I know you've recently started roasting and doing a lot of roasting and tasting in your cup life. What does this mean for roasters and people who taste coffee? What could this mean, at least? Just give us kind of a scope of what COVID-19 can do to that part of our industry.
Well, on the short term, you need to think, like I said, a lot of roasters might be having stock for longer than they thought they were going to have, especially now with volumes dropping. So one thing you need to consider is that the quality of coffee in general might drop. I think from the good side, we're going to start seeing the difference between the good roasters from the great roasters a lot more, especially coming the end of the year, because a lot of them would have to work very hard with coffees that are starting to age a lot more. But in saying that, coffee is coffee, right? I think for too long, if I try to look at the positives, we've been spoiled with coffees that tasted like many things. I always like to say to baristas, especially baristas out there, a coffee that tastes like orange is a miracle. You really need to understand that's not, orange is nice. No. that's already very hard to make happen. And we've been spoiled with amazing coffee, especially in Australia, for a very long time. So this might be the time when we need to take that pretentious thing out of coffee and start understanding that this is also our livelihood. This is also our jobs. We start seeing a lot of support from customers. There's a lot of people out there that are buying retail coffee. There's a world of coffee that a lot of baristas don't know about, and that's the home brewing. There's a lot of people out there that have, like a little espresso machine at home, and they're not following the rules. They're not professional baristas. They're just people that love coffee. And I think it's time to connect with them as well, to understand what they're liking, what they're doing at home. So I think in terms of ideas, there's a lot to focus with, especially from the barista's point of view. And I put a lot of emphasis on baristas, honey, because they are the front lines of the coffee chain. So the coffee chain ends with the barista, and is them the ones who tell people what is nice and what is not. Is them the people that end up selling that final product. So I don't think there's any normal person out there that would say, oh, I don't like this Honduras coffee because it's just not fruity enough. I think that it's mostly baristas the one that say that. So I think that if baristas can like reshift their attention a little bit and rewire that and work with what actually people at home are drinking, I think it's going to be a huge opportunity to maintain business alive.
I agree. And just for the sake, someone's asked me a question. What does aged green bean mean for someone who's tasting coffee at home?
Coffee with age will start losing its structure and its, I guess, vigorosity. So the strength of the coffee. And eventually, when the coffee is very, very, very stale, it starts tasting a bit woody, right? So these things can be masked a little bit with roasting. That's why the old school coffees we used to know, they were very dark roasted, because those coffees were basically very old or very low quality. They didn't have nice characteristics to enhance. So through a very dark roast, you were able to mask some of those faults. So there's definitely things that can be done through the roasting to help these coffees be not so bad. But I think that, yeah, that's the ultimate kind of like bad flavor.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's a bit of emphasis even within the chat here talking about the end of the chain and what we're doing being the end of the chain as a barista. Obviously, I don't know if many people know, I'm actually not a barista anymore. I deal with baristas.
Me neither. You're barista honey, I'm barista Yana. But...
Yeah. We're frauds. I definitely can agree that there's definitely been times, even when I've, had meh orange or I want more, not really having to really work hard for something amazing. So I think it's really important that we actually go back to the stories of the producers and the stories of roasters and the stories of traders, like how I think now more than ever, people getting more educated on the chain to convey the message, because at the moment, baristas are going to be rooting for their cafes. And I think this all push comes back to, we want to be pushing the price up, and we want to be, everyone wants to elevate. So we need to all elevate together. And I just it's funny because we started just talking about cafes and now we're all the way at the green bean, but they're all kind of coming back to, we all need to pick up our game and communicate more.
Oh, yeah.
The ramifications of us not doing these things can result in like a collapse of one.
And you know what?
Tree, which will ruin everything because it's like a domino effect.
Mate, but this thing that you're saying was the problem before COVID-19 came on.
100%.
The problem was already there. And the problem was that there was starting to be this connection, a gap between what the coffee means for the producer, what the coffee means for the economy and for everybody else. And what it tastes like and how fancy it is. There was a lot of like, the trend was getting into like new varieties. I was getting a lot of emails from people saying, oh, do you have any new varieties, any new process? And I was like, what for? Like, are you trying to just sound fancy, or are you actually genuinely looking for something that is different? And I think that if anything, this could be taken also as a bit of a wake-up call. Raul Rivera, one producer from Santa Rosa, he's also three times El Salvador Cup of Excellence champion, said to me once, on my very first days of a green bean buyer, I asked the naive question of, oh, which one is your favorite coffee? And he said, my favorite coffee is the one my clients buy. And I think that's an important perspective that we need to have as baristas and as roasters. Like, anyone that drinks coffee is already a miracle, and we should be celebrating that. I don't care if you put 2 sugars on it. To be honest, I used to care when I was a barista, and I regret that so much, because now I see it back and I'm like, dude, anybody that drinks a coffee, it's a miracle. I love that. My only problem is someone that doesn't drink coffee. That's the hard one. But the people that drink coffee, they can tell me, look, I like cappuccinos because I like how chocolatey they are. No worries. I can brew you a coffee that tastes like chocolate. Let me show you that, right? Like, that's an easy way to get in. And I think we got too far away, too disconnected from that. And we were just a bunch of people. I don't know if you know the story of the emperor clothes, right? Like, when they tell this emperor that they're going to build this amazing dress for him, and it's the most amazing dress, and only the very smart people can see it. And these guys are doing a scam to him, and they're selling him something that doesn't exist. And the emperor goes out like totally naked, right? And there's only, everybody tries to pretend they can see the dress, because it's like, oh yeah, everybody wants to sound they're smart. And there's only one kid, the one that says, dude, he's naked. And I think this is the same, but we were getting too far away from like, oh my God, these incredible lots and these incredible coffees, and not really understanding that coffee is coffee. And sorry, I get too carried away, but let me share you one story. We went to Ethiopia this year, and I had a guy asking me if there was any origin country that wouldn't fuck up their coffee. And I was like, what do you mean about fucking up the coffee? Like, you know, it's coffee. And he's like, oh, well, but, you know, they burn it and then they put all this sugar to it. And I'm like, have you seen the people in Ethiopia drinking coffee? They drink coffee with their mates. They laugh, they smile, they're chatting. They don't shut up. They're talking all the time and they're drinking coffee. I think if anyone is drinking coffee, well, it's them, you know. I don't think that me brewing at home and drinking something that tastes like flowers and this, I don't think that's the right way to drink coffee. No way. I think if anybody got it right, it's them at origin. So let's not forget what coffee is, you know, and coffee is a catalyst. Coffee is an excuse to get together. Coffee is something that gives us energy. And this message is a message that can be shared by baristas at the front lines with the customers, and connecting with the customers more instead of separating from them.
And I think another really good question someone asked, Dave did, how can individuals, customers, and then I think also baristas should be involved in this, actually contribute to the front line, to support the farms and to support all of these things as a whole?
I think sometimes in my head barista years, I thought that giving people a little bit of information of where the coffee comes from can help them connect with it. So instead of sharing these like boring facts that maybe we think they're important, like altitude or microclimate, I think sometimes what's happening in the farm, or where is it from, or who it does it come from, it's something that we can try to bring into the table and share with the customer. For example, one little thing I used to share with clients when in my barista years was like, oh, this blend tastes like dark chocolate because it has India coffee in it. India coffee is very chocolatey. And it's just like a little thing, you know, it's like a little piece of information that would give that client that fact to remember and to go, oh, okay,
There's a link.
This tastes like chocolate. And they would then tell their mates, and they're like, oh, order this blend because it has India coffee and it's stronger, right? So give them something that they can actually take away with them and enjoy. Explain things in a simple way. Even if it's about the process, maybe it's about the grinding. It doesn't even need to be necessarily only the farm, but I think is the engagement what is the most important. Because I think at the end of the day, anybody can make coffee at home. And if Australia clients are choosing to go to coffee shops, it's because they also are enjoying that connection with the barista and that remember your name and they serve you nicely. So I think it's very important to not forget that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think definitely the small things are the usually most impactful and important instead of blurting out all this information, dropping a card off. I think it's about opening the door. It's not about pushing someone through it.
Correct.
And I always like to look at things like that, and especially when I explain to baristas, when they tell me that they can't, share all the information with all the customers. It's not about making them want a fancy coffee or a higher end coffee. It's about embracing everything that you have, but also knowing what doors to open for the right people. And then if you open the door and they don't want to look at it, they want to slam it shut, then we just move on from that conversation. This person doesn't want to be a part of it, but he still is, or she still is being a part of it by buying that coffee. So we should be very happy about those things. And I agree 100% with this barista mentality of like, damn decaf, no syrups, no this, no that. Like, at the end of the day, first of all, let's just go back to who you are. This person's literally paying for your wage.
Correct.
Not only, like, that's just something that's directly impacting you. This person is paying for your wage. This is paying for your cafe to be open and making your job possible. That's just like the top three things that directly impact them. And then above that, if you want to also open that door and go in, there's so many other things that you as a barista have the responsibility of, and I think maybe are not credited enough, because I think obviously there is a big gap between someone who's just a barista and a roaster, and even the knowledge between those two, and they're almost completely separate people, even though they work for each other. Without a good roaster, there's probably not going to be good coffee, and without a good barista, there's a high chance that there could be a really bad coffee as well. Same, going back even further, producer, trader, so trader, producer, and then actually being on the farm as well. So there's so many things that need to go right for that beautiful moment to happen, but I think it's all about showing people those doors, and as they walk through them, having more doors being opened to really see how broad and the range of our industry is really important. So I'm really glad you actually touched on that, because I really want people to understand that.
It took me to leave the coffee bar to realize that the most important part of being a barista is the smile of the barista.
Yeah. Is my smile good enough? I don't think I was a good
So
enough.
dreamy. So dreamy.
Yeah, I'm looking for a girlfriend, guys, just while we're here. Now let's get back on subject. What can we go a little bit more into roasting? Is there anything you wanted to talk about roasting wise? I'd really just think just to really connect a bit more there, because I think that's probably the biggest hole so far.
Well, there's going to be a big need for roasters to become a lot more fluid about how they deal with their product. I think that in the past, we have had the luxury to decide which kind of blend components we wanted on the coffees, or which kind of single origins we wanted to showcase, and having enough rotation of the origins. I think now roasters would have to be a little bit more creative about, all right, if I have a blend that tastes like chocolate, let's just work towards that. If I have a blend that is a little bit more fruity, let's work towards that. Because you might not have the flexibility of choosing which coffees to put in at all. Let's imagine that your business is absolutely doing great, and for some weird reason you have not been affected by this at all. You still don't know if a lot of coffee traders would be able to bring coffees in. So you definitely are part of the coffee chain, and that coffee chain is going to be affected, because everybody on the chain is being affected right now. So roasters will need to have a little bit more flexibility. Some roasters that weren't good at forecasting and weren't good at planning or looking after their numbers and finances they might need to start doing that a little bit more, having more control over their stock, having more control over their volumes, and yeah, have a closer eye into the final product they're producing. And then from the single origin point of view, I think, I don't want to say this to scare anybody, but I really feel that we would end up seeing, you know, Brazil natural as a single origin in the next few months. And I don't think there's anything bad with that. I think that maybe we needed it, you know, as a little bit of like a humble moment. But I totally see filter blends coming out, or filter espresso, sorry, of blend of for espresso coming out. I think the luxury of single origin might not necessarily be on for too long.
Yeah, it's probably not really about getting those 90 plus coffees and just actually appreciating that the coffee is from one place. It's not a bad thing. We have a question from Anil. What do you guys think about the small roasters after COVID-19? I'm assuming he's talking about, you know, small businesses that are maybe not doing less than a ton a week. How do you see that panning out for them?
To be honest, I think that at this stage, it's not so much about your business size. I think there's a lot of small businesses scared because they think big businesses would have it easier. And you need to remember that bigger businesses have a bigger ship to steer around. They have a lot more costs. Hospitality is an industry that relies very heavily on wages and staff, and bigger companies also have more people employed. Smaller businesses can run on less people. Therefore, sometimes they can have less costs. So I don't see a huge risk. The only risk I see right now is for the people that don't have a plan. I think that anybody that has a plan and understands that maybe 2020 is not the year to make any profit, but it's the year to survive. I posted this last week about going into hibernation, and it was kind of cute to see the Prime Minister talking about it this week, because I've been speaking about it since this whole thing started. Like, in business, you can't always win, and there's moments where you would have to just try to sail through the storm. The same goes for finances, right? In finances, they always use this example with finances that people is looking for the best possible weather to go sailing. Like, people is looking for the market crash to invest. That's not how you should do it. You should build the best, stronger boat to make sure you can go and sail. And if you do need to protect yourself, your boat is prepared for it. Angus Mackey teach me that, by the way. But yeah, you need to be prepared, and you need to make sure your business is prepared. It's not so much about avoiding all risks. I think that risks are going to be ahead, but it's about how much you can plan. So I am very optimistic about small businesses. I actually think they have a lot less to lose.
Yeah, well, I guess you said, like, I really like the boat analogy you have there. Building that ship or building that boat, when you do run into problems, so let's just say you see rocks, being able to stop, maneuver, or change on a quick decision are really important, and having plans and things in place for you to actually be able to steer that ship in a different direction.
Yeah, and look,
sorry, keep going.
No, sorry. I see the comment about the small roasteries in Europe, and I totally understand that, like, lack of tourism, because the same is happening here. It affected small roasteries, especially in areas that were affected by the wood. Definitely relying on tourism to pick up for Easters, and now they're not going to have that. But I think that is the moment to be agile. And being agile is looking at, like, what's happening around the world. China is reactivating. Start increasing your sales towards that area of the world. Like, I had a chat actually with Sarah Jean the other day from Extraction. She's from Chinese background. And she was like, I don't know what I can do to help my business. And I was like, this is the moment to start doing all those videos, all that, like, you know, promotional stuff, like, and you have the ability to do it in a different language. Russia, another country that is not so affected. Like, I think that right now getting creative is the way. And I think baristas can actually do a lot for their businesses. If you think that you're going to solve this by looking into the pool of business you currently have. If you're just going to look into Australia, for example, or in the case of small places in Europe, if you're just going to look into that, I think you would fail. Like, I think a good way of planning is just to looking at where are the opportunities and what can we do to try to maximize them.
Yeah, you're already in trouble by, like you said, with the pool analogy, you have a very small pool that can only contain so much, but also you're not capturing other markets, which are really important.
Correct.
I think if you tuned in before on that live, we did speak a lot with Nadi about controlling and being creative. I think we actually really dimmed it down to being actually 3 things, and then you can dive super deep into them. The 3 words were having clarity. So clarity, the first word, being realistic, which is real, and so realistic would be tying into planning as well, and being creative, which also ties into planning, learning more, trying more things, capturing as much as you can, always kind of working within those 3 things. You're going to find that you're going to have to find a way. And he talked about spending and fixed costs are the only things you can control right now, and these are things that you can control, and you cannot allow, if you allow things that are not in your circle of concern or things that you can't control you're just gonna, again, we go back to the ship, you've driven straight into something that's going to crash everything and burn. So you
Correct.
have to control what you can control, and then also prepare for as much as you can. I think obviously that's the main message and positivity coming out of these things. I think let's go back, let's dive a little bit more in. What have you been doing during this time, Yanina, to kind of make it, what have you been making of your time so far, seeing as isolation is quite important and working from home? Give us kind of an insight of what that's looked like for you.
Well, working from home means also a lot of less distractions. So actually, I find productivity gets a little bit higher working from home, which is nice. It's sad to not see workmates, but we have a bit of a promise with each other that we will send audios to each other about our days every day. Sorry, it's the Project Origin team. I don't know if you saw my latest Insta post today, but we started this new idea about to avoid all the conversations about COVID-19. Let's pick a random country per week and choose 2 disciplines about that country, and let's choose research everything about them, and then let's have a phone chat. So, for example, the first country I'm going to start with my friends is Ethiopia. And there's already a lot of like very funny ideas out there. I have friends saying, I want to research ballet in Ethiopia, or I want to research, like online gaming, or like, there's just all these different like random topics coming up. And the idea is to change the country every week, so we can keep our minds occupied with, other kind of information that is not just everything that is happening outside. So in that regards, I've never been on the phone so much in my life. I think it's very nice. Connecting with a lot of people, talking with a lot of people, and then, doing cold showers and ice baths whenever the stress gets too high, or going for walks. I've actually been walking a lot, about like 10 to 14 Ks a day.
Not bad.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Within 1.5 meter distance of any bypass.
Yeah, and I have a treadmill at home as well. So, there's a lot of like watching of series and walking.
Lovely. Well, that's obviously really positive to hear a lot of these things. I don't even know how far off schedule are we? Are we on? We're good. We actually did really good. Okay, yeah. Alex is supposed to be joining anytime soon, but I feel like I should, leave the stage for you to kind of mention anything in some kind words for anyone to kind of, think about, or things to ponder. I think your idea is really cool about kind of taking the time to maybe make yourself accountable with friends to learn something new, whether it is about a country or even anything impossible. I really do agree with that. Like, make yourself accountable to learn something new during this time, if you have time. Or if you have to plan stuff, bloody plan.
Yeah.
But I'll let you finish that up.
Yeah, look, like I said before, please focus on which character on the movie do you want to be. If you feel like you're getting too stressed or too worried, or you're watching the news all the time, just really try to think, which part of the spectrum would you like to be? Would you like to be thinking about solutions, or would you like to be focusing about just information? Sometimes gathering all that information is not that important, really, as the information keeps changing every week anyway. Keep your distance, be responsible, don't be silly. If you go out, I mean, you can go out. They have advised that in Australia, just don't touch things. Like I've seen people like walking around the lake and drinking from the water fountains. Like, come on, like there's no point on washing your hands if you're going to be touching that. So, just be mindful of like following the safety recommendations, but following them through, like paying attention to the whole details, not just coming home and washing your hands. Do not touch your face and all that stuff. And then when things get overwhelming, really focus on what's happening right now. I think that's very important. Just right now, I'm in my house. The virus is not here. It's warm inside my house. There's hot water. There's still coffee. It's fine. That's already like much better than a huge percentage of the world. So try to bring awareness of what is actually happening. And they said, 70% of the population will get coronavirus, but 70% of the population don't have it right now. So, chill, breathe, stay at home, stay safe, learn how to cook. I do intermittent fasting, which has been very useful for saving food and not having to go to the supermarket. So that has definitely helped. So just try your best to keep control over your mind more than anything.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Yanina. I really appreciate your time.
For that little comment about the ice bath, just look up Wim Hof and you'll get all the information about doing ice baths and breathing exercise that would help boost your immune system.
I'll send you a bit of info on that, Sharpie. All right. Thank you so much, Yanina.
Thanks, matey.
All right. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining, guys. We're on our last leg of the big kind of IG Live seminar. We've got Alex Murfet jumping on next. He is amazing. I cannot wait to chat with him. Hey, how you doing? Just to recap what we have been doing, we have been discussing what's been happening around the world and different sectors of our industry that are affected by this current virus. Alex is in. He's wearing a fancy shirt and hopefully no pants. How are you, mate?
Fantastic. Just trying to up you in the shirt game. You know how it is.
Man, I love it. I'm glad. Yeah, we've got a bit of cleavage. It's so good. This is what the people came for. Okay, stop that. You're gonna make everyone leave this live.
Did you see all those? They're good.
Yeah. I'll quickly introduce Alex and let him finish himself off.
Wouldn't be the first
Alex
time.
is amazing barista. One of probably the most, underrated. Also underrated innovators and thinking of ideas. I kind of always, every time I chat to Alex, I kind of get a brand new perspective or a new idea or something new. So he really gets the best out of everyone that he works with. He's a head barista / manager on a Marrickville in Sydney, which has really, I believe, changed the way we serve coffee and the coffee experience that you can get at a shop. And he's going to talk a lot more about what he's been doing and how he does it. Just to give you a good background on him as well, he's a seasoned competitor competing in Brewers and Barista, being very successful in both of them. Also, latte art is his next revenue, and he can't wait to dive into that. Is he a birthday too today? Is it? What?
No.
Oh, okay. Someone said HB. Oh, maybe it's head barista. Anyways, introduce yourself, Alex. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? What do you?
You just said everything.
I want to know more. I want to hear it from you.
That's pretty much everything. Yeah, I make coffee. I'm motivated by people, and I like coffee a lot. I'm an average competitor. I've never won, so come second once, so that was nice. But never won anything, so we'll see what happens if we ever get to compete again. So yeah,
That's exactly that.
But just making coffee at the moment, just sitting, been making tea while listening, which has been nice. Haven't had any coffee today, so it's kind of nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Alex, I'd love for you to share. Hey?
I just want to ask a few rules, honey. First is, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Excellent. Second is, how long we got?
Well, there's no one after you, so we can talk for a while.
Excellent. I know we've got less viewers than Yanina, but I expected that. Cool.
And as long as we inspire one of those 18 people, I'm going to be very happy. I don't really mind.
Yeah, me too.
More about
less filters off, right?
Hey?
Filters off, right? No.
Yeah, I reckon we'll talk. We'll stay on like the virus subject, but then we'll go and talk about filter and talk about all those things, because I think there will be a few people wanting to, hear our thoughts and ideas with that as well. So maybe kick us off with, give us kind of like a 2-week wrap up of what's happened, maybe 3 weeks, kind of with the virus coming in and out, and how Marrickville's transformed. I think this is really important for people to, this is a place that's planned exactly what you're talking about, and really put a lot of things in place. So from what I've seen, so I'd love to see maybe start from when you heard about the virus and then move into right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is the general rule is that we've been kind of working through is we can kind of plan, but expect it to change. You're right there, mate?
I can't drink water.
Yeah. You can plan all you want, but things are going to change. And especially when the situation's changing all the time, but also politicians are announcing different things, conflicting things all the time, is that, sometimes they'll announce something at 9 and you need to turn around for the next day, knowing that there's only you've got completely different restrictions. And so for us, a lot of that has been just working on the fly, asking forgiveness rather than permission, and just kind of doing what we think is right based off what we know our values as a shop and as a company to be. And then, if we stick to our values, then, and what we, if we stick to our values, then, we can't go too far from where we need to be. But I guess a lot of it was starting from where we were 2 weeks ago. We'd kind of been not tracking it, but just keeping an eye on it for a while. Some of our staff have friends in Korea, Vietnam, that kind of thing. So we were talking about it. We kind of, but I guess didn't really know the depth of it. But a lot of, I guess, what we were trying to do at that point was just take each day as it comes. And then when our social distancing came in, and overnight we had to take about half of our seats out. And then so we completely redesigned the shop and how the flow and everything we do, communicated that to our staff for a weekend, and had a pretty busy weekend. And then 2 days later, I had to change it again to just take away again, overnight. So a lot of what we've been doing has been trying to just adapt, and not so much for us and being able to make things simple, but at the end of the day, a lot of our customers have, you know, everyone's on edge. Customers are struggling to, like customers are struggling just in their lives. Some have lost jobs, and you know, we've been, and like businesses around us as well. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is just be stable for them, not so that they can turn up for coffee the next day and wow, like this is a takeaway bar. Didn't, you know, it's completely different to how it was before, but wow, like I didn't know this could, you know, that was such a big change. And they feel like, you know, it looks great for us, sure, but they actually feel a sense of security knowing that as things change, that we will continue to be there for them and supporting them with their needs. And as their needs change, adjusting to that. So, you know, as social distancing came in, a lot of the customers appreciated that, you know, we were sticking to that, keeping limits for how many people we had in the store. We removed menus, put everything on, put everything on QR codes. A lot of that was our marketing guy, Jordan, kind of making that happen. But yeah, a lot of it is staying adaptable. And, you know, as we kind of went to takeaway, it was going, okay, well, we know that we're not going to, our food turnover is going to drop, so we need to find that elsewhere. So we started selling the food that was coming in instead of making it into the food. So we've been selling avocados, we've been selling milk, eggs, bread, sourdoughs. They're like our biggest seller at the moment. But to answer Yanina's question, have we seen a drop in business? Not really. And to be completely blunt, like in some ways it's been, we've actually been busier. Part of that is part of that, and we're very aware that, you know, Honor is a brand that people know, and a lot of our turnover from a business perspective has been more along this retail side of things, so coffee bags, because people in Sydney are coming to us for that. But you know, at the same time, so business hasn't dropped for us. We know it has for others around us, but there's some other kind of factors in that. You know, we've worked really hard to develop a culture, not just within our staff, but customers, and they want to support us, but as well, like the businesses around us. We've been really lucky that the cafe next door is still open. They're called Hungry Goat, and they're lovely. They do something completely different for us. We focus on coffee and they focus on food. And but you know, the customers from both, like our locals, want to support us, and so they support both of us, which has been great. And we've got a deli up the road, and you know, in the same way, they've actually closed their cafe, and they're just running the deli, and we've seen some customers come from there. But in some ways, it's kind of sad, because it's like opening a new shop for anyone that's ever done that, where you get new customers every day, and some of them you know have been going somewhere else. And the sad thing is, you know, every day we're getting new customers that are saying to us, oh yeah, like I normally go to so-and-so, but they've decided to close. And I guess the biggest thing for us is going, you know, the best thing we sell at the moment isn't coffee. The thing that people need is kindness, and faith and hope and like love, and they just need that's all they need from us. We can provide them a coffee and a service, but if it's without those things, then we actually are just missing the point. And to be completely blunt, like, you know, if like from a barista perspective, if you just care about the coffee, you're not gonna like you and your business probably won't last very long, because now, and what we've seen in these days is that people need to feel supported and loved, and they will support you back. But if you don't, then they're not going to. So, yeah. That was a rant, sorry.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Very true, very interesting to hear that you guys have gotten busier. I think this is, and what you've kind of explained is that's due to the market actually desaturating in the area that you're in, and almost being like a last man standing kind of vibe. But things that I've also noticed that you mentioned were that you expanded your market by selling different things and things that your suppliers sell. Were you selling these things at a profit, or were you guys selling these things very similar price to Woolworths? Like whereabouts is the range on this, would you say?
We've never. The thing about all this is that we've been agile in a lot of it because we at the shop we kind of work we work really well as a team. Isaac, our manager, is very detailed, and if you know him, you know how particular and specific he is, and a real strength. For me, I'm not really like that. I just kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks. But together, it's worked really well, and so as a team, it's been good to be able to look at these things and go, okay, well, we can sell milk, we can sell eggs, and sure, we could look at what Woolworths is doing, but to be honest, we've never looked. A lot of what we do, and this kind of comes down to a value of both us and our company, is integrity. In that, like, to be honest, there are some things that is necessary for us to put profit onto for us. And there's other things that, to be honest, we don't need to. Like, there's no point us doing that. We just want to get. There's things that we have been selling very close to cost price because we know people. Sourdough is a perfect example. Like, we know people need it. We know people want it, and it's good bread. But there's no point us trying to make money from people at a time when they're struggling too. It's as much. They're supporting us, and we need to support them and care for them. And like it depends on the product, and what actually goes into it, what's required from us. But that's probably the best way to say it.
I agree, man. I think it's just more for, like, I definitely understand that point of view, but I wanted any viewers to understand that as well. Moving forward, what implications does Maryville put into play in terms of actually social distancing, hygiene? How has that changed your job as a day-to-day barista?
Look, we like to think we're pretty clean, but a lot of you get in a habit. Like, I mean, as a floor staff, there's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 chucks you use throughout the day to wipe tables and that kind of thing. Where we were before we stopped dine-in service, where I'm doing Gus. Before we stopped dine-in service, it was a push for our team, just because, like, I mean, the service that we offer, if you haven't been in, we have one long bar, and the service that we offer, we're trying to, I guess, be quite attentive. And so it was tricky for us. We did, there are a few things we did. One was, we didn't leave any water glasses on the table, water, like, servers on the table crafts. And we started just glass, and then we would top up water as we go. If you've ever tried to do that in a shop, and it's busy, it's hard, and sometimes you miss, and sometimes people have to call out. But I think it's, you're talking about different situations as well, and we would put the glasses on the table and say, hey guys, if you need some more water, just give me a yell. I'll come straight over and fill it up for you. And setting an expectation for customers for everything was really helpful for us. Extra sanitizing. We would split jobs, like, throughout the shop as clean jobs, dirty jobs. For example, making coffee sounds weird, but it's a clean job. because we want to make sure that there's no contaminants, because if something goes onto our machine, then that could potentially continue on to every coffee we serve, and that's not ideal. So we were kind of really specific about that. We're a shop where everyone's a barista, and so everyone moves around a lot. But it meant we kind of had to have very clear sections for people. Floor staff everyone kind of does wash up, but floor staff no longer doing wash up. Door person doesn't leave the door. We were trying to keep one person just doing interacting directly with payments, and that was either Isaac or myself. And then trying to the other thing we're aware of is that some staff are more at risk than others. Some do have higher stronger immune systems, and so we would talk to staff about that, trying to just kind of figure out, okay, well, if you're very limited with what you can, you've got a compromised immune system for some reason, you would then, we're going to keep you on the machine. So you're not going to have direct interaction with customers. You're still going to talk to them, but we're not going to put you in a position that's unsafe for you, because we recognize that this, you may be more at risk, not so much of catching it, but the consequences of you catching COVID-19 could be worse than someone else. So a lot of just sanitizing everything all the time. So many sanitizers, washing hands all the time. And then, again, the clean, dirty jobs, trying to, taking payments is a dirty job. So is clearing a table. So is doing wash up. We used to, for example, wash up, and then that person might shift across and dry some things, and that was kind of we kind of stopped doing that. So it was tricky to do all of this, and that we were doing that with 6 staff in our shop, and as we went down to, we had to, when we took out half our tables, we kept that, because the biggest thing for us is, keeping our staff, that's the most important thing. But I guess the bottom line in all of this is that, we do all these things, like we want to change, we removed the menus, and started doing QR codes that linked to menus. But a lot of what we're trying to do is just, I guess, is to give better service, give more hygienic service, and the way to look at it for us, you're like, yeah, it was hard, but not one staff member complained, and every single one of them was actually like, oh, I actually feel like I'm more engaged by it's trickier, but we're able to give better service to people because we fill up their water, because we need to be more knowledgeable about the menu, because there's no menu in front of them. We can't just look at it and kind of make a decision for them, but we need to know our product knowledge. We need to know everything to give that better service, not to make up for what we're doing, but how do we do that while we're a little bit pushed at the moment, and then going takeaway, it was that all became easier, but it's still not ideal, but at the same time gives us great opportunity to build a new business model, and then once this is all over, be able to do the 3 that we've had to do so far all at once, and that's really exciting.
And a lot of learning that seems to have happened between then and now, even with determining certain jobs, whether they're clean or dirty. I don't think many baristas actually understand how much cross contamination might be happening when they're making coffee, or even serving lots of people at once. Maybe hospitality workers actually might have a higher immune system just because they're in contact with so many people all the time. Could be a very good point. I think we just had a big question from Dave. New comments from ScoMo this evening about limiting public gatherings to 2 people. What are your initial thoughts on what this could mean for your business?
Yeah, so we've, just before I jumped on here, me and Isaac had a chat about it. To give a way that we work, so as a shop, the way that we're kind of set up is that we have a manager of our shop, and because we're a small shop, I work closely with Isaac on a lot of stuff, and then as we, because we're part of a big company, we actually sit as part of the retail group, the Honor Retail Group, which includes Cupping Room down in Canberra, High Road, and Coffee House, and Honor Melbourne. And so our decisions are some decisions we make on the in shop, and some decisions we make all together. And so far the conversation that I've had with Isaac and what we kind of think is that, we don't know, it's not clear, but based on the knowledge that we have, we'll still open tomorrow. We'll still, we know that we're doing things safely. We're not trying to trick out, anyone. We're not trying to, just get around it so we can make some money. We're actually we're here for customers. And so central to that is doing everything we do safely for staff and customers. And so we know we can do it safely. If there's restrictions on 2 people, man, I don't know what that means. I know that if it says indoors and outdoors, then, we've got 2 people indoors, and we've got, a garage out the back. So I don't know, we could fit 4 people in the shop, I suppose. Maybe, I don't know. No, it's not really clear. And I my guess is Gladys will do another kind of press conference, and the same will happen in Canberra. But for the moment, we're opening. We know that, and we will continue to open until someone tells us to. Not because we want to keep making money or we're trying to do anything like that, but just because customers appreciate us being there, and so we'll continue to be there. Time will tell what that looks like, but we know that we can run our takeaway bar with 2 people. It's not easy, but we can do it. And if that means that, then with customers, we know we're lucky to have a huge footpath in front of us and a lot of room, and so there's plenty of room for people to spread out, keep their distances. And so I guess it comes down to the definition of a gathering. If that does happen and we end up not being able to do a takeaway service, we'll move to delivery. We're just setting up now, similar to High Road in Canberra, our delivery service. And that will be, we won't be using Deliveroo, we won't be using Uber Eats and that kind of thing, but trying our best to our casuals or our staff will be delivering, because we want to be able to provide as many hours for the casuals for the people that work with us, so we can kind of keep people employed. That's keep people surviving. That's the most important thing. So
I think to touch on that too, obviously with my work, I'm working with a bunch of different cafes, and with this whole virus thing happening, I have seen a lot of hours being cut, with stores being forced to move into takeaway, which means obviously people are forced to cut down hours, cut down wages. So we've seen unemployment of hospitality workers obviously rise. Obviously, you said you're spreading the hours out and trying to make as many possible for other people. What advice would you give someone who maybe is about to lose their job or unemployed, or even moving into maybe cut hours of work or something like that? What would be your kind of advice?
I think a lot of it, there's 2 sides to this. One is you know, an employee and one is an employer. People are most important. That's what I believe. Maybe, and you know, I guess it comes back to your values. But if you know, for us and for Honor, I think I'm okay with it, but like a lot of our team, right across the company, full-time staff have taken less money to be able to provide for us to provide for everyone for longer. I'm a full-time employee. I have too. And people at different levels depending on the circumstances. But that's, you know, if we go into lockdown for 6 months, that's so we can provide for as long as possible for people and our casuals. Now, my personal values, like I don't believe in, you know, just getting paid for nothing. And this is where the employee side comes in, is that, you know, if you're, everyone who's employed wants, you know, a lot of people, they want to work if they can, but I guess it's not always possible. But thinking outside the box, or, you know, thinking inside the box, in that, okay, here's the box you've been given, you've got nothing to do about it. So rather than thinking outside the box, think inside, get creative and figure out how much money does your business need to make. Like as an employee, if you're about to lose your job, come up with an idea. Come up with an idea that you can take to your boss and go, hey, this is, I think we can make X amount of money doing this. I think that will allow me to work for X amount of hours, and that's going to keep me being able to pay my rent, buy groceries. And I know that, you know, maybe people think that, you know, they should be compensated, and I do think that people should be compensated, but I also think there's so much opportunity for people. People are so creative, and if, as an employee, you can present those ideas to your boss and go, hey, I think we could make more money. I think we could make some money this way. We've lost turnover. It's less busy. Cool. Let's try this. You know, if I'm that manager, I'm that boss. You know, I think I said this to you, Hanny, last week, but the ideas that seemed stupid or dumb 6 months ago, they're not now. Because if you're a manager, and this is, you know, if you go and look at, there's an organizational psychologist called Adam Grant. He does this book called Originals, and it's this idea that if you create an environment where people can learn and express, but at the same time provide value, then you're going to be better off. And I think when you can get more creative and create more turnover, it comes down to understanding what it is you're doing. Like if you're a barista, then understand that that your value is not in the coffee that you make. You are representing the entire chain, but if you're truly adding value, then I guess you're going to be able to create more. Like your employers are going to want to keep you around more if they can, and if not, you know, to be completely honest, someone is, you know. But I guess a lot of it comes down to managers in their, like the psychology of managers is that they're looking for holes, they're risk mitigators, they're trying to make sure that any move that you make is not going to affect turnover, affect the business, affect staff, anything like that. But you know what, like for a lot of businesses right now, that's not an issue anymore. Managers should be going, let's try everything, because why not? What's the worst that could happen? Oh, we lose turnover. Well, we already are. So, you know, if you don't act and you don't make changes and you don't try new things, then you won't be able to retain turnover or even get more turnover. And here's the thing, right? Maybe you've been spending 2-3 years as a business owner, and I don't own a cafe, but maybe you've been spending 2-3 years as a business owner or a manager, like building business model that, and you thought, oh, this is what the community needs. This is what, you know, and you've been kind of, you know, doing okay, or however you've been doing. But then, like, what happens if through all this you stumble on a whole bunch of things that you never realized that your community needed, not just because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but because this is what they want? Are you going to try and stick to what your business model, or are you going to completely change because you've realized, oh crap, this is what people want, this is what people need right now? And you know, like I said before, it's often just kindness. That's all they need. Most people don't care about, you know, Yanina was talking before about the, you know, all the coffees, and, you know, if you've been in a shop, you know that we have a lot of those coffees. That's a lot of what we do. But, you know, and we still have customers come in and have them in takeaway cups because they love that. But, you know, that's still core of who we are, but it's not what people need right now. And when they do, we'll be ready. But, you know, it's crazy ideas. And I've got 100 that we can go through in a bit, but I think for the employee, just trying to find ideas that, you know, a good manager is great at making money for someone else. And, you know, that's true more so than ever before. A good barista, a good employee. And if you can make money for your boss, and they have good character and they're a good person, then they're going to do their best to provide for you.
So being creative and taking calculated risks are really important as an employer, and employee, you know, also contributing to being creative and sharing ideas and making yourself valuable in maybe ways that were not thought of before. I think obviously is super important. Maybe if you are a designer, or you are a web designer, or you have a side hustle business, you're a videographer, you're a photographer, this is the perfect time for you to go, cool, let me handle everything social media way. I'm going to bring more revenue through social media. I'm going to bring more revenue through my dad's coffee cart that we can drive around. Like, there's going to be something you may have, a skill you may have that might not be completely related to the business, but if it's going to make that business more money, I think it's worth trying, or even suggesting in the beginning. And if you aren't in a business that wants to do anything at all and just wants to freeze up, it's only inevitable for that business to just close down, no matter how deep the pockets are. It's not a worthy investment if someone's not willing to be creative or take the risk.
And at the end of the day, you know, like, there has to be a positive for every negative. And, you know, what I believe is that, you know, if I wasn't lucky to be working where I am, and then, you know, that I would, you know, lose my job and just be told overnight that I'm gone, then there's, you know, obviously I'd be devastated and I'd be sad, but then the flip side of that is, great, what can I do now? I've got time. Maybe, and this, you know, this depending on your situation, but maybe this is the time to put the time into your business. You know, figure out, you know, are you a barista that wants to build your brand and, you know, Barista Honey, or are you someone that needs to, like, just, you know, that has been talking about shit for ages and just needs to fucking start it? Like, then just do it. Like, because as long as you're, you know, you're safe and you've got a roof over your head and you've got your groceries, like, do what you can. Like, I read a post today from a guy I used to know that said, he was talking about how, you know, he's working from home now, but on reduced amounts. And he said to me, no, he didn't say me, I read it. But he was saying that, like, if you've got the time and you're at home and you're more productive, then, you know, take the time to be good at 3 things, get better at 3 things. One for yourself, one for your family, whoever that might be and whatever that might look like, and then and one for your career. And for him, that looked like learning Turkish, learning to speak Turkish because his family's Turkish. He wanted to get better at playing guitar because it's good. He just loves playing guitar, but that's for him. And then for his career, he's learning how to understand CAD and Autodesk. Cool. Like at the end, if this is 6 months, 3 months, at the end of that, if you have a new skill for your career, you've done something for your family, for yourself, then coming out of this, you're going to be on top of it. And there's so many things you can learn. If you're a barista, you don't have a job right now, man, you need to, there's so many courses out there. There's so much reading, bunk it down and learn everything. Come out of this as an amazing, if you went in as someone who, didn't really understand the science of coffee, man, now's the time to understand the science of coffee, because you can sit, you can read. And I know this, I'm not naive to think that it doesn't take, that people still need to survive. I'm saying that if you have time, just don't fucking sit on Netflix. Don't waste it. Just get into something. And it might take you away from the coffee industry, but that's cool, because at some point you're gonna be able to come back if you want to, and you'll have something completely new and unique that you can bring to that. Yeah.
I think what you're trying to say is, more importantly, it's time to prioritize the right things instead of sitting there procrastinating, waiting for someone to prioritize for you. And if that means you do need to prioritize your self upskilling, your family relationships, or your career path, all three of those things need to be set at a quite high priority, and you need to understand what positive things you can take out of this, because at the moment, like you said before, here's your box. You have to make money. You have to make this much money a week. Well, no one's going to give it to you. You need to figure out a way to do it, and blaming it on an employer or blaming it on something, or, the virus has ruined my life. It's ruining everyone's life, and everyone has these situations that pop up. It is really important that you use this as an opportunity to upskill yourself. And for me, this is, Alex, I am almost doing something very identical to what you've just spoken about. The very first thing I thought about, personally, my hours have been dropped down. The very first thing I thought about doing was studying industrial design, which is something I've always wanted to do. And that was the very first thing. It wasn't like, oh, I'm fucked for money. It was just like, oh, and I'm not in the greatest financial position. But I didn't buy a course. I just signed up to audit one, and then if I wanted to buy the certificate that I'm going to get when I finish the course after it, I can. But the thing is, I just did some research. I spent the time, maybe I can guarantee you there's times that I sat down and was like, fuck, I'm so cut about this. Fuck, what can I do? What can I impact? How does this affect me? How does this affect the people around me? And then there's times when I'm procrastinating, do nothing. But then also set specific times that I know from 3 to 5, I need to do this thing, and sticking to it and benefiting your own well-being. If it's your physical health, these things are all super important during this time. And like I said, using this as an opportunity to upskill if you're unemployed is super important. You're always going to be able to do something new. And if it does take you away from the coffee industry, great. You're going to come back with a better perspective of whatever you are learning and actually apply it to our industry, because we do need more all-rounder stuff. We can't just be constrained to our little box of niche, specifically tasting flavoured coffees and specifically tailored brew ratios and temperatures. So we do definitely need to zoom out, as Matt Lewin would say, the great Matt Lewin, and really see the bigger picture here. So yeah. Whew.
And I think like, man, like the thing is, right, like so many people, this is, I guess, just what I've seen is so many people just go in the industry, go so deep in coffee. And the problem with going deep is you might become an expert, you might become amazing at it, but you don't, you struggle to apply that outside of each situation you're in. But if you go deep in one area and wide, and you learn as much as you can about as many things as you can, just even if it's just little bits of information and things like that, you become you find unexpected connections, and you find spaces where people haven't been before, because no one is as unique as no one's as unique as you, and no one has the experience and everything that you do. So when you find those things and you make unexpected connections, people haven't tried those things. So then you try it and like, wow, you tried something new. No one's done it, because no one thought to, I don't know, like no one thought to use a spice grinder to grind coffee. Cool. Someone did once, because they thought they understood more than just how do you best brew coffee. It was wider than that. They went deep, but they also went wide and learned from other industries and other things. And the more you can learn about more things, the better off you're going to be in the long run as an employee, but as a person as well.
Definitely agree with you there, mate. Just freaking on fire here. We're just destroying it. I will wrap this up because I need to leave in 10 minutes, but I feel like we should do a brewing live soon, seeing as we'll have so much time to elaborate further. But is there anything you'd like to leave the viewers, Alex, or any kind of wise words or statements, comments, compliments?
Not really.
All right.
Yeah, not really. Like maybe, I don't know. I hadn't really thought that far. Fire me up about something.
Hey,
fire me up about something.
I want you to tell the customers how you really feel about this situation and what they can do to help you.
Customers.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep smiling and stop supporting the cafe with the baristas and the owners that don't smile at you, that don't give a shit, that are in it to make a buck. Because the cafes, and there's so many of them, and they're not just specialty cafes, but they're not just specialty coffee people. They're using a whole bunch of different ranges of coffee. But if you're the customer, then like support the places that actually give a shit about you. If they do, just keep going back. Just keep going, because they need the support. If they don't, and they're like, they, are rude, or they're just, even if they just they're not really into you, they don't really care about your day, then find a new cafe. Because hospitality is what the industry's called. And if you can't be hospitable to people, then maybe you're in the wrong industry. And maybe the best way to get them out is for people to stop going to those places. I think there's less round than there used to be, but I'm going to paraphrase you, Hanny. That way I can blame it on you. But there's plenty. The reality is, there's plenty of people, and this is kind of a sad thing, but there's plenty of people that are going to go out of business. The other side of that is that actually, this is not how you said it, but that's okay. The other side of that,
I said
the other side is that people, the other side of this is there's going to be a less saturated market. There's going to be more cafes with people who are really passionate about it, because let's be real, no one's going to want to invest in hospitality anymore to make some money. And because, well, look what's happened to the industry. And so if that means that there's less cafes, that's sad. But if it means there's more passionate people and more places for good baristas to go, not for a job, but to feed their passion or feed their drive to, you know, provide good hospitality for people, then I'm all for that. And don't want to see anyone go out of business. But maybe this is going to force some people to go into different businesses that they're more passionate about. And it's also hopefully going to provide some opportunities, because there's going to be empty cafes, there's going to be empty places in 3 or 6 months that don't have businesses running out of them. So maybe if you're a barista and you want to start opening your own cafe, you know, you might not be in the situation right now,